Good evening, everyone, and welcome to everyone to our first virtual annual meeting of Council. Before we start our meeting tonight, let us have a moment of quiet reflection. The Dorset of today is a diverse county with residents of all faiths and many of none. In recognition of that diversity, I ask you to sit quietly for a moment, to reflect on the decisions we are being asked to make today, and to enable those of faith to use these moments for your private prayers and intercessions. We are summoned here to make decisions which bind our authority for time to come. Let us do so in an atmosphere of dignity, goodwill, respect and calm. May those decisions be just and fair, and in the long-term best interests of the people who live and work in our beautiful county of Dorset. I thank you. I believe we will now test the electronic voting form. Is that correct?
That is correct. I'm just going to pop that into the chat bar now for members to test. Okay, if members please could click on the link just to test that your electronic voting is working correctly. Thank you, members. Whilst I'm just waiting for all those votes to come in, please can I remind you that when voting, you can only vote once and you cannot change your vote once you have cast your vote. I've received 68 responses so far, so please click on the link and vote. Thank you. The votes are still coming in. Is there anybody who hasn't been able to vote? I've only received 71.
I can't vote, Richard Biggs.
Councillor Biggs, are you able to open the link?
I haven't got the link. I've got nothing past 6:14.
In that case, if we have trouble, you might have to vote. Give us your vote verbally during the meeting.
Okay.
I've received 73 responses.
Susan, this is Hayley from Democratic Services. I haven't received votes from Beryl Ezard, David Morgan, Derek Beer, Janet Dover or Julie Robinson. Mike Barron, also those votes haven't come through yet, and Mary, I think Mary Penfold is having trouble with her Wi-Fi.
Okay, we'll just give those councillors then another couple of minutes just to try that link.
Hayley? Hayley?
Yes, speaking.
It's David Morgan here. I voted about 3 minutes ago.
I'll just check that's come through.
Hayley?
Yes, speaking.
Yeah, I voted as well ages ago, and I've done it again now.
I'll just check those have come through. Yes, those have come through now, so we haven't received votes at the moment from Councillor Trite, Councillor Ferrari,
have you received my vote now, Hayley? It says my vote's been submitted.
Lovely. That's all right.
Thank
There's
you.
just a slight delay.
My vote too, Hayley, Bill Trite. That's been submitted and accepted.
Lovely. Yes, I've got yours now, and Simon Christopher's has come through, and we've gone up to 73 votes now, Susan.
Okay, I think then in that case we will continue with the meeting, and if anybody has any trouble voting, submitting a vote electronically in the meeting, then please put your microphone on, advise us, and we will take your vote verbally. Thank you.
Thank you. We can now proceed with the next item on the meeting, which is the election of chairman for Dorset Council. And can I just say that it's been a privilege to represent Dorset Council for the past year and a bit. And I have great pleasure in moving forward with this next item. Can I call on nominations for chairman of council? I would like to nominate my vice chairman, Councillor Val Pothecary, who has been a tremendous support in the past year. Have I a seconder for that proposal?
Yes, Madam Chairman, it's Councillor Coombs here. I would like to second the proposal. Having worked with Val on the chain gang previously, I know she would do a fantastic job.
Thank you. Do I have any other nominations for chairman of council? If not,
Chair, Paul Kim, I'd like to self-nominate myself for the reason only we're running a democracy. If I've got a seconder.
Thank you, Paul. Is there a seconder for Councillor Kimber? If not, Paul, whilst not taking that personally, and thank you for your desire to ensure that we do have a democracy, as there is no seconder, that nomination does not stand, and therefore I have great pleasure in pronouncing Councillor Val Pothecary as the chairman of Dorset Council for the coming year. Thank you. And Councillor Pothecary, I will bring a chain to you hopefully tomorrow. So Councillor Pothecary will be reading the acceptance of nomination. If Councillor Pothecary is still with us, or has she fallen off her chair in shock?
I think you're muted, Councillor. No, I'm here.
Good. I leave it. I put it in your capable hands, Councillor Pothecary.
Thank you, Councillor Batstone. I will read the Declaration of Acceptance of Office and then sign it. I, Valerie Pothecary, having been elected to the office of Chairman of Dorset Council, declare that I take the said office upon myself and will duly and faithfully fulfil the duties of it according to the best of my judgment and ability. I undertake to observe the code as to the conduct which is expected of councillors of Dorset Council. I will tip my device so that you might be able to see me sign. Thank you very much. I shall ensure that proper officer receives this at the earliest convenience. Sorry. I don't intend to make a long speech, but I would like to thank, on members' behalf, our outgoing chairman, Councillor Pauline Batstone, for her hard work and dedication over the past 16 months. Pauline has been an exemplary chairman and has worked tirelessly to serve the council and promote our wonderful county of Dorset. Until lockdown, she was a veritable whirlwind, not only in her ward of Blackmore Vale, but across the whole county. As our first ever chairman of Dorset Council, you have set the bar very high, Pauline, and we offer our grateful thanks. I would sincerely like to thank members for supporting the proposal and electing me to this high office. It's a huge honour and privilege, and I have promised to fulfil my duties to the best of my ability. In my term of office, I will be focusing on supporting business, established businesses desperately trying to recover from the effects of COVID-19, particularly in our towns, and those possibly looking to start up a business, as well, of course, promoting inward investment to the county. We all know that a healthy economy and workforce is critical to the well-being of Dorset, and I feel we must actively support our businesses as much as possible. I would also like to say that I will have a virtual open door, and I really want to support the work that you do in your communities. So please contact me if you feel I can help you to make a difference. Thank you very much. So the next item on the agenda is the election of Vice Chairman. I would ask for nominations for Vice Chairman, but personally I would like to nominate Councillor Mike Parks. I have not known Mike Parks for very long, but what I do know is that he's exceptionally well thought of. He's been a town councillor for 22 years and was Mayor of Ferndown in 2014-15 and 2016-17, so he's well acquainted with civic responsibilities. Mike is a very hard-working councillor and in his free time is a retained firefighter, being particularly busy in Wareham Forest earlier this year. I hope you all feel able to support his nomination to become Vice Chairman of Council. Thank you. I would ask for a seconder, please, to my proposal.
Happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Bryan. Are there any other nominations? Thank you. I declare.
Councillor Crane, you've got a right to speak, please, from Councillor Nick Ireland.
Okay, sorry, Councillor Ireland. Yes, please speak.
Thank you, Chairman, and Mayor, I can congratulate you on your elevation to the post.
Thank you.
We are now a third of the way through Dorset Council's second year, and it's been very refreshing to note on more than one occasion, in fact most occasions, we've worked together cross-party to acknowledgement of what we're doing is right for our residents rather than following party dogma. And so in continuation and recognition of this ethos, I'm pleased to nominate Councillor Howard Legg for the position of Vice Chairman of Dorset Council. Howard has been a community representative for probably more years than you'd care to remember. He's been at the forefront of the Liberal Democrats at Weymouth and Portland Borough Council in the past, and he's been a previous mayor of the borough. He continues to represent the people of Weymouth, both on this council and on Weymouth Town Council. He's also been a previously elected member of Dorset County Council, representing the constituents of Weymouth. There can be no doubt as to the experience and balance he would bring to the role, and therefore I commend him to you as the most suitable candidate for this position. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ireland. Do we have a seconder to your proposal?
Yes.
I'll second that.
Yes, I was. So
sorry, could you just say which councillor you are, please?
Councillor Brenton.
Okay.
I am happy to second that proposal. I think he would, as the silver fox of Weymouth area, I think he would add interest and balance.
Okay, thank you very much. We've received 2 nominations, so we will be voting. I'm hoping that something will come up in our chat panel to allow us to select our preferred Vice Chairman.
Yep, I will just post that into your chat panel now.
Thank you, Susan. Okay.
I'm just waiting for a few more votes to come in.
Susan, my votes seem to take a long time leaving my computer.
Yeah, that's okay. There's a little bit of a delay, so we just have to give it a little bit of time for the votes to come in.
Thank you.
But I have received 75 results. Is there anybody who has not voted? Please, could you cast your vote verbally if you are having problems? No, in that case, I can say, Chairman, that there were 44 votes in favour of Councillor Mike Parks, 28 votes in favour of Councillor Howard Legg, and 3 abstentions, which therefore makes Councillor Mike Parks duly elected.
Thank you very much, Susan. Congratulations, Councillor Parks. Would you like to sign your declaration of acceptance of office and say a few words if you'd like to?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. I, Michael Parks, having been elected to the office of Vice Chairman of Dorset Council, declare that I take said office upon myself and will duly and faithfully fulfil the duties of it according to the best of my judgment and ability. I undertake to observe the code of conduct as to which is expected of councillors of Dorset Council. And I will try and get my camera down so you can see me signing that now. And again, I will get that to officers as soon as convenient. I'd just like to say a very, very few words, just to say thank you to Val for proposing me and Ray for seconding it, and thanks to all members of council for the confidence you've placed in me. I will be there to support Val through these very strange times in her period as chairman, and again I'm there virtually to be found, and I look forward to an interesting year ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Parks. We will move now to agenda item 3, which is apologies. Do we have any apologies, Susan?
Apologies, Chairman, from Councillor Andy Canning, and I believe also that Councillor Tony Alford has not been able to join us this evening.
Okay, thank you very much. Agenda item 4 is minutes. Minutes of February of the meeting held on the 18th of February 2020 and the 11th of June 2020. Would you like me to sign them as an accurate record? Sorry.
Yes, please, Chairman.
Okay.
Yes,
if there are no issues to raise on accuracy, I will confirm these minutes of this meeting. Thank you very much.
Yes, please sign.
Agenda item 5 is declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest, please, from members? Okie doke, I will take that as a no. Agenda item 6, Chairman's announcements. Unfortunately, I have to report the sad death of Alan Thacker, who served on the former West Dorset District Council. Alan died on the 8th of March this year. I'm not quite sure what we're going to do now, because we had invited his friend and colleague, Councillor Tony Alford, to say a few words on behalf of the council. Do we have an update on that, please, Susan?
Yes, Chairman, I believe we have a pre-record that we are going to try and play now for you.
Okay, thank you.
I thank Council for the opportunity to say a few words about Alan Thacker, former member of West Dorset District Council. I'm fitting that it should be a Dorset Council meeting that I'm able to do this, because it may not be well known that he was one of the foundational figures behind the creation of Dorset Council. Long before the creation of Dorset Council in shadow form, there was a forum involving leaders and deputy leaders of the 9 Dorset councils to consider the prospect for the creation of unitary councils. It is fair to say that those attending held a wide range of views about the merits of unitary, but Alan was able to contribute calm and wise words about the merits of exploring the opportunity. And ultimately, this advice led to the creation of 3 foundational documents that eventually paved the way for the creation of the 2 unitary councils. Alan was deputy leader at WDDC, and I found him a very valuable source of information and advice that was well thought through. He had been a councillor for many years, initially elected as an independent, and he had a particular interest in community safety, and in particular serving on the Community Safety Partnership. It is fair to say that everyone, whether members or officers, found him very good and helpful to work with. And thanks to Alan, we had a good relationship with the DAPTC. And that was through the hard work he did at the parish council level. He was chairman of Knightsford Group Parish Council, served as a member of the Central Committee and the DAPTC executive for a number of years. At the time of his death, he had served 2 years as its chairman. But he did more than committees. He enjoyed visiting his holiday home in Florida and travelling on cruises, and he worked these events around his council meetings. In 2019, Alan decided that he wished to concentrate on parish council activity and therefore did not stand for election to Dorset Council. The news of his death came as a big shock to many of us. He died on 8th of March 2020, aged 77.
Thank you. I think you'll all agree that that was a very fitting tribute from Councillor Alford to Councillor Alan Becker. And I would like to ask, please, now that we hold a minute's silence as a mark of respect. Thank you, councillors. We will now move on to agenda item 7, which is the election of leader. Please, can I have nominations for leader of the council?
Chairman, if I may, I would like to nominate Councillor Spencer Flower. We are now 18 months into the new council, and we knew that our first period was going to be challenging, and it has been challenging in ways that we had no idea would be so. I think Spencer's done an excellent job, and we have attempted to try and involve all people in as many aspects of the council's work as we can do, and it is with great pleasure I therefore sponsor and put forward Spencer Flower to continue in his role as leader of this council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wolf. Do we have a seconder, please, for this proposal?
Yes, Madam Chairman. I'd like to echo Councillor Wolf in acknowledging in the most extraordinary year that anybody could envisage. In fact, we didn't have any idea at the outset of Dorset Council of the sort of year we would see in the battle for coronavirus. I would like to second the nomination for Councillor Spencer Flower to be Leader of Council.
Thank you, Councillor Parry. Do we have any other nominations? In which case, I declare Councillor Spencer Flower Leader of the Council.
Thank you very much, Chairman. If I can just say a few words, thank you all colleagues across the Chamber for supporting me as Leader of Council again. It's always a great privilege to be involved in such a role, and I'm looking forward to another really constructive year. It'll be a difficult year, but if we continue in the way we've gone, as Peter Wolf said, there's no reason why we can't achieve a great deal. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Flower. So agenda item 8 is the appointment of Deputy Leader and Cabinet.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Well, it gives me a lot of pleasure to announce the appointment of Peter Wolf as Deputy Leader. Peter talks about the work that I've done in the last 18 months. He made it a great deal easier for me. He's been a great support, done an awful lot of work. And I know colleagues across the Chamber respect Peter for all the energy he puts into what he does, and he achieves a great deal. So I had no hesitation in asking Peter to continue in that role in the coming year, Chairman. And Peter's got portfolio holder for corporate development and change, broadly the same as it has been before. And I would just say to colleagues that beyond the meeting this evening, I'll make sure a schedule of what each of the cabinet members are, what the portfolios and who they are, will be sent out to all members. So you don't need to take notes tonight. I'll get it sent out through Democratic as soon as I possibly can. The next person I want to mention is Councillor Gary Suttle, who now he's got the portfolio hold for finance, commercial and capital strategy, which includes revs and bends, finance operations, procurement and capital strategy. And can I say Gary moves from his previous portfolio at a time of significant financial pressures caused mainly by COVID pandemic and the ongoing lack of government funding. However, we are a reforming council, having achieved the early revenue savings expected from the creation of the Dorset Council, which has removed duplication, with the prospect of further considerable efficiencies through transformation. So I wish Gary well in his new role. Councillor Ray Bryan, portfolio holder for highways, travel and environment. Again, highways, travel and parking, environment and well-being. Thank you very much, Ray, for what you've done in the last year. Councillor Tony Ferrari has moved to economic growth, assets and property. He will be joining me on the LEP board. So he's got economic growth, assets and property, and a particular emphasis on the need of Weymouth regeneration and development. And we've had a task, an EAP looking at this, and it's that Gary Suttle set up. And we need to continue with that. So I think this move will enable us, Tony, to use his considerable local knowledge and understanding of the social and economic challenges in Weymouth and the surrounding area, and the lack of social mobility and the prospects of unskilled work in this area of Dorset, including Portland, have been recognised by the cross-party EAP. So we got challenges there, and this links well with the Dorset LEP. So I wish Tony well in his new role. David Walsh, portfolio holder for planning, again, planning, spatial planning, dealing with the local plan, development management enforcement, conservation, trees and landscape advice. Again, David's done a great job in the last 18 months, so I wish him well in that. Jill Haynes, Councillor Jill Haynes, portfolio holder for customer and community service, environment and wellbeing, regulatory services and community safety, waste services and customer services and libraries. So welcome to Jill, who brings a wealth of cabinet experience and I feel sure will drive forward the reforms needed to deal with the ongoing service delivery, value for money, relationship with town and parish councils, and most importantly, carry on the work started by the previous portfolio holder, Tony Alford. And I'd like to take the opportunity to thank for his work and support during the first 15 months of this council. Talk about Councillor Andrew Parry, portfolio holder for people, children, education, skills and early help. So commissioning and partnership, schools and learning, skills, safeguarding, early help. And he's done a great job too, I have to say. Laura Miller, Councillor Laura Miller, quite a popular face that all of you have seen many times, leading with me on dealing with the pandemic and all the front-facing stuff with communities and us as members. So adult social care and health, commissioning, health and well-being, public health, and so on. So well done, Laura, done a great job. Councillor Graham Carr-Jones, portfolio holder for housing and community safety, housing need, housing options, housing advice, community safety partnership, building better lives. A big aspect of work. Housing is so important to us, whether it's in Dorset or where it is, but I've got a lot of work to do in that area. And once again, Graham, well done on what you've done since the council was formed in May. I want to move on now, colleagues, to something different, and that's the lead members and their roles, because it's something that I can appoint up to 6 lead members as part of the constitution, which when we approved the rearrangement of our governance arrangements back in on the 18th of February. Prior to that, we had a task and finish group, which I chaired cross-party, and we had one meeting, did a briefing, so everyone was content. And at the 18th, I got full support for what we were proposing. So today really is the next stage of explaining what the cabinet portfolio holders will have support from lead members, and I'll run through them. I probably won't go through the whole list, but again, I will publish this immediately following the meeting, so you get a chance to have a good look at it. But so that under the portfolio holder for people, children, education, skills and early help, we have Councillor Byron Quayle, who's going to be the lead member for education. We've got Councillor Jane Somper, who will be the lead member for safeguarding. So I wish them both well in that. A lot of challenges there. It's a big portfolio, and there's support needed to drive forward change and transformation. Portfolio holder for people, adults, social care, health and public health. Simon Gibson, lead member for care. Councillor Piers Brown, lead member for health. Again, it is the biggest service, the service that has the biggest budget, so there's an awful lot of work to be done there as well. So and last but not least, highways, travel and environment. We've got Councillor Knock Lacey Clark, who'll be lead member for environment, travel and harbours, and Councillor Cherry Brooks, lead member for highways. So as I said, after the meeting, I'll let you all see that, because the important thing for me is that if you know what people are doing, you get an opportunity to tap into that knowledge and experience and get involved in supporting each other in getting the job done for the council. Thank you very much, Chairman. That's I think that's me on the appointments to cabinet and lead members and the appointment of the deputy leader. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Flower. Actually, I think it's you again on agenda item 9.
It is. I'm not going to say a great deal tonight. Normally, I've got into the practice of doing a leaders bulletin, and there won't be a leaders bulletin tonight, but there will be one when we have our full council on the 15th of October. But I just wanted to dwell momentarily, really, on what we've been going through in the last 5 months or so, since the middle of March. They are challenging times ahead, but we've certainly demonstrated throughout the COVID pandemic so far just how resourceful and adaptable we can be. Dorset Council's plans in place to tackle challenges ahead, and we're making good progress. By working with our partners and our communities, we can address issues that arise and even seize the opportunity to come up. And frankly, we have a lot to be grateful for here in Dorset. We have a low rate of COVID so far, strong communities, and a beautiful place to live. So, as I said, there will be a full leaders bulletin on the 15th of October. Where I'll cover a number of other areas, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I did notice that Councillor Wolf had an RTS in the chat box. Was there something you'd like to say, Councillor Wolf?
No, that was related to the appointment.
Okay, that's fine. I just didn't want to leave you out. Okay, so agenda item 10, public participation questions and statements. We have 3 questions and 1 statement which have been received from members of the public, and I'll invite officers to read out the questions and statements submitted. The first question will be read out by Matt Prosser, our Chief Executive.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is the question submitted by Tony Walter. Getting to zero carbon, lobbying national government. On the 15th of July, Dorset Council published its long-awaited draft climate and ecological emergency strategy, now passed for public consultation by Place Scrutiny Committee and Cabinet. One of the most striking things about this strategy from a council controlled by the same party as the UK government is its highlighting of national policies and regulations, a national lack of direction and low national standards, hampering local authorities from moving to zero carbon, including several policies, regulations, standards introduced in the last decade. Page 17 is the reference. Reforming this national framework is essential if the UK is to achieve the government's decarbonised commitments. The strategy, pages 27, 30, 48, 49 and 55, promises to lobby government on the national policies, regulations and standards that undermine its climate and ecological ambitions in 5 of the strategy's 8 areas for action. Renewable energy, page 26. Uncertainty at national level re-strategy and direction. National grid limits deployment of renewable energy at scale. Current policy framework does not support the move to low carbon. The planning system does not actively encourage renewable energy. Building and assets, page 29. Lack of national strategy for heating. Current and potential future home standards for new builds not high enough to deliver national carbon reduction targets. Lack of legal requirement to retrofit buildings. The economy, page 35. Low carbon and renewable energy economy growing only slowly and adversely affected by recent changes in legislation and incentives. Government introduced additional business rates levy penalising businesses that install renewable energy on their premises. Circular economy heavily influenced by national policy and regulation. Water, page 41. Government limits council's power to enforce water conservation in new developments. Transport, page 47. Lack of national direction and policy. And Tony Walter's question, how does Dorset Council propose to lobby government effectively?
Thank you, Matt. And we will have a response from the portfolio holder for Highways, Travel and Environment.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Tony Walter, for what is a very important question. This is such an important issue which has been highlighted in our Climate Emergency Action Plan and strategy. Many of the actions required in Dorset are heavily reliant on an effective national policy framework and support to achieve our aspirations. We as a council will therefore be lobbying government in a number of ways, to include myself, the chair of our Climate Change EAP and portfolio holder, has become a member of the Westminster Policy Group on Climate Change, called the Conservative Environment Network, working with policymakers, which includes 80 parliamentarians. We will be lobbying national government through Dorset Council's membership of the Local Government Association and attending LGA seminars, meeting with ministers with responsibility for achieving carbon neutral by 2050. There will be direct lobbying through our local members of parliament and national political contacts across the UK. Last but not least, lobbying ministers for funding to support our plans and strategy. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Bryan. Question 2 will be read out by Jonathan Mayer, our Corporate Director, Legal and Democratic. Thank you, Jonathan.
Good evening, members. The second question is submitted by Joe Burlington. Greta Thunberg said, "I've met many of the most powerful people in the world, and even among them, pretty much everyone lacks even some of the most basic knowledge." And in The Guardian, Rebecca Willis wrote, one MP said that just a few of her 600 or so fellow parliamentarians took climate change seriously as an issue. You might not even get into double figures. The council has acknowledged that there is a climate emergency and an ecological crisis, but its current policies will not deliver a sustainable future, and it is clear that many politicians and most voters are unaware of dire threats to the future of our children. And then Mr. Burlington's question is, what actions will councillors take to educate themselves and the public about these matters? And then there's an offer from Mr. Burlington that he is willing to support councillors in person or by Zoom or similar, and that he is a former physics teacher who has been studying these matters intensively for 16 years.
Thank you very much. We do have a response now from Councillor Bryan.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. And thank you very much for the question that I've received from Joe Burlington. We have identified awareness raising and behavioural change as essential to achieving the aims of our climate emergency strategy. We will be developing a comprehensive communication strategy for our approach to the climate and ecological emergency. This strategy will draw upon a variety of media and approaches to deliver key messages. This will include raising awareness through a range of channels, upgrading our climate change website, developing an online information hub for sharing information and best practice, and providing information to residents through council literature. We will improve the awareness, engagement and knowledge of our staff and service providers through staff awareness campaigns, organising targeting briefings and training sessions for officers, members and decision makers, and including information in staff induction training. We will also establish an internal climate change champions programme. Supporting the community action. We will support and work closely with town and parish councils and other organisations to signpost and communicate shared messages. Engagement with key stakeholders. We will build support from stakeholders and the wider public by informing and educating on the benefits and opportunities of acting on climate change. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Bryan. Matt Prosser will read question 3, please.
Thank you, Chairman. So question number 3 is submitted by Professor Philip Marfleet on behalf of Dorset Says Low Pay No Way, convener Weymouth and Portland Action on Wages, WayPoor, and Jenny Lennon-Wood, Secretary, Dorset Trade Unions Council. Real living wage for employees of Dorset Council. Question. Dorset Council, DC, proposes increased payments to council members and new paid roles for members of the majority party. Our council appears to have ignored repeated recommendations to introduce the real living wage for its employees and those working for its contractors. Dorset is a low-wage county. We need urgent action to address a crisis of poverty wages and declining social mobility. Why is DC directing funds to its senior members while thousands of council workers and others struggle to make ends meet? Statement. Over a year ago, local organisations urged DC to tackle poverty incomes and declining social mobility. Declare its public commitment to meet legal requirements on the national minimum wage, equal pay for women and terms and conditions of employment, and expect this of its contractors. Prepare to introduce the real living wage, £9.30 an hour, and encourage others to follow suit. Take the lead in educating our young people about rights at work. Our proposals were referred to the Executive Advisory Panel on Economic Growth, to which we gave a presentation in September 2019. Having heard nothing from the panel, we raised questions at the Council's meeting in February 2020, and were informed that the issues would be considered during the development of the Council's economic growth strategy. The Cabinet has apparently approved this strategy without the benefit of democratic debate by full Council. There are no proposals to introduce the real living wage. Meanwhile, senior council members are to be appointed to new paid positions, increasing the annual cost of councillors' fees by over £100,000. DC has undertaken a preliminary assessment of the implications of introducing the real living wage. Yet, the economic growth strategy contains no evidence of practical measures to address the injustice of low pay. Almost a third of jobs in the council's area pay less than the real living wage. In Weymouth and Portland, this rises to 48%, the second worst record in the country, government figures in brackets. Many of Dorset's low-paid jobs are in tourism and retail, among the sectors hardest hit by the COVID crisis. Termination of the government's job retention scheme could have a devastating impact. HMRC recorded claims to furlough a third of all eligible jobs in Dorset by the end of July, around 51,600 potential redundancies. Dorset is likely to be one of the areas worst affected by the COVID crisis, its low wages making many families vulnerable. Cornwall shares many economic problems with Dorset. Its council introduced the real living wage for all employees in 2015. Why can't DC do the same? DC should abandon plans to increase payments to councillors. Instead, let's work together to make Dorset a living wage county.
Thank you, Matt. And we are going to receive a response from Portfolio Holder for Corporate Development and Change.
Thank you, Councillor Peter Wolf. Thank you for the question. The government sets the national minimum wage for employees up to the age of 24 and the national living wage for those who are 25 and older. The national living wage for 2020 is £8.72. The majority of Dorset Council employees are on Green Book terms and conditions. The Green Book pay spine is subject to annual increases which are negotiated at a national level between the local government association and trade unions. The lowest point on our current Green Book pay spine, effective from 1st of April 2020, is £9.25. The setting of members' allowances is a different and separate matter. On our agenda this evening is the report of the Independent Remuneration Panel. The Council is required in law to establish a panel and have regards to its recommendations. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Wolf. Agenda item 11, public participation, petitions and deputations. We haven't received any petitions or deputations, so I shall move on to agenda item 12, questions from councillors. And I would like to ask each councillor to ask their questions personally. So we will begin with Councillor Alex Brenton, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is a question for Cabinet members for Children's Services and Planning. The plans to build a new children's home at 45 Dorchester Road, Weymouth is good news, very good news for the looked after children of Dorset. I hope it's also good news for Dorset to prove it is fully committed to a low carbon future. The plans for 45 Dorchester Road, we assume, will include modern green building techniques, such as using low carbon concrete or possibly green concrete, ground source heat pumps or air source heat pumps, solar panels, rainwater storage, grey water usage system, and all the other eco-friendly adaptations built in from the start. If we care about the future of our children, Dorset should prove a leader in building for the future and be an example to county developers that good modern design should last lifetimes. Can the Cabinet members confirm that low carbon building techniques will be used on all public buildings from now on?
Thank you, Councillor Brenton. You will receive a response now for the Portfolio Holder for Planning.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor David Walsh, responsible for planning. Dorset Council's statutory responsibility as the local planning authority is separate from any role it has as a developer, and it is important to maintain a distinction. The local planning authority must consider all applications as submitted and on their merits, including those by or on behalf of Dorset Council, having regard to the local plan and any other material considerations.
Thank you very much, Councillor.
Madam Chairman, if I may give the second part of the...
Yes. Please do.
Thank you. And thank you to Councillor Brenton for your warm words of support for this important new facility for children and young people in our county. The detailed design and specification will be undertaken in line with the aspirations contained within the Council's climate emergency strategy, subject to existing budget constraints. The new build part of the project will use modern methods of construction, MMC. In effect, a modular build using advanced sustainable principles and offsite construction, reducing embedded carbon. We do intend, better correct myself on this one, it's an important point. We do intend to use heat pump and photovoltaic panels, indeed incorporating as much sustainable technology as we can achieve within the budget and the procurement process before the project goes to contract. All reasonable steps will be taken to reduce the carbon impact of future public buildings. However, this will need to be supported by council policies and resources as we drive our estate towards zero carbon. Our climate emergency strategy sets out our intentions to develop these new zero carbon policies over the next year and further consideration by Cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Parry. Next we have a question from Councillor Maria Rowe.
Thank you. Tetra Pak is a food packaging used for dairy, beverages, soups, ice cream and other prepared food. One of the biggest benefits of Tetra Pak is that it's completely recyclable. Most councils accept Tetra Pak with their curbside collection. Aluminium foil and foil trays are also collected at the curbside by 86% of councils, according to Aluminium Insider in 31st of December 2015. In Dorset, this waste is either sent to landfill or people have to drive or walk to a recycling centre or recycle bank to dispose of it. Which if you live in a village can be some distance. Why can't Dorset Council include this waste in its curbside collection?
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. You will receive a response from the portfolio holder for customer and community services.
Thank you, Chairman. It's Councillor Jill Haynes. Thank you, Councillor Rowe, for your question. Cartons are comprised of layers of different material bonded together. Plastic, card, and in some case, this foil are involved in the cartons. The process of separating the materials requires a specially designed process and plant so that they cannot be reprocessed with other paper and card. Foil is another material which requires special sorting. The Council's contracted materials recycling facility is unable to separate cartons and foil from other materials for recycling through technologies in sorting facilities, those technologies in sorting facilities are being developed. Meanwhile, the council maintains banks of cartons and foil in car parks and at the network of household recycling centres. I should say I have just come into this portfolio literally today. So it's something I shall be looking at for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haynes. Next we have two questions from Councillor Nick Ireland. So question 3, please, Councillor Ireland.
So thank you, Chairman. I'll just begin with saying I find it depressing I have to ask this question again, but here we go. Back on the 1st of October 2019, I asked a question of Cabinet concerning the drastic reduction of service levels relating to bin collections and particularly recycling collections experienced by my constituents in the Crossways ward and also in neighbouring areas. This stemmed from a shortage of serviceable vehicles combined with a chronic lack of qualified drivers. Councillor Alford, who is the portfolio holder, responded that there have been a number of vehicle breakdowns and issues with driver recruitment, and he continued, upon investigation, we have concluded that Dorset Council currently pays DWP's LGV drivers less than the neighbouring authorities and comparable companies. Therefore, we are reviewing Dorset Council's pay rates for DWP drivers. Officers are working closely with HR colleagues to explore all options on pay and grading, including the option of a market supplement being applied to DWP driver posts. So I've followed this up more times than I care to remember, and the service hasn't improved. If anything, it's got worse, and I'm hearing the same from fellow members whose wards are served by the Wareham depot. So, and I had somebody, a member of the public, contact me yesterday from East Knighton. I see no evidence that the vehicle situation has been resolved and have yet to be informed that we are now competitive in our offer to LGV drivers. Seemingly, nothing has been achieved since the issue was raised. Why hasn't this been sorted, and who is taking responsibility to ensure it is? Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Ireland. You will receive a response from Councillor Haynes.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ireland. As I said, right into the role, it's something that I need to get my teeth into, and so I am giving you the response. However, I would like to point out before I give my response that Dorset Waste Partnership doesn't exist. It is Dorset Council's waste services now. It was partnership when we were working with districts and the county, but it is now all in-house. So I just wanted to clarify that to start with. So my response is, the review of drivers' pay across Dorset Council's waste services has now been completed, and local market increments have been applied to all driver roles. So drivers are now being actively recruited. Now that the depot refurbishment has been completed at Wareham, in the short term, an additional vehicle has been hired to assist. Mike Moon, Head of Waste Operations, will continue to work closely with the Area Operations Manager and the Service Manager for the fleet in this area. As I've said, Chairman, I'm new to the role. I have been made aware of the problems that people seem to be having in this area, and it's something I want to investigate as a matter of urgency.
Thank you, Councillor Haynes. Councillor Ireland, would you like to ask your next question, please?
Actually, Chairman, I'd like to ask a supplementary, please, for the first question. Which I'm allowed to do, thank you.
Yes, you are allowed to do that.
Yeah, I thank Councillor Haynes for a response. Given the seriousness of this and the fact that a year has gone by and nothing has changed, can I request, so this is my question, will she come back to full council next month and report back on the progress between now and then, please? Thank you.
Thank you. Have you got a response to that, Councillor Haynes?
Councillor Ireland, I'm happy to report as far as I've got. It may not be the complete answer. As I've said, it's something that I want to look into and to visit the site, and I will endeavour to do that and at least have done an investigation, but whether there is a full fix in that time, I don't know.
Thank you, Councillor Haynes. Hopefully those assurances were helpful, Councillor Ireland.
So my next question?
Yes, please.
Okay. So the proposed development of Dorset County Hospital is extremely important, not just to those patients local to Dorchester, but also to patients further afield who choose our local hospital to meet their health needs. With the likely merger of the Poole and Royal Bournemouth and Christchurch trusts, combined with the changes proposed under the Clinical Services Review, we are seeing a migration of services away from Poole to the more distant Bournemouth campus, and a likely increase in the demands on DCH as a treatment centre of choice. The planning application for the development was submitted back in October 2019 and has since then been deferred 3 times from the Northern Area Planning Committee by this council. The 65 million funding from central government allocated from these improvements has to be applied for, and there is a real danger that further delays in considering the planning application could impact upon the central government set deadline of December for the submission of the business case and the subsequent loss of some or potentially all of the funding. Can the portfolio holder explain in detail the reasons for the delays in considering DCH's planning application? And I'd like to hear the response. Not saying it's going forward, give me the reason about why, and give assurance that it will be considered before the December deadline.
Thank you, Councillor Ireland. You will receive a response from the portfolio holder for planning, Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Chairman. And thank you, Councillor Ireland, for your question. But as you'll be aware, being on the planning committee, there is only so much I can say about an ongoing planning application. And this is a current application, and so the following response is given without prejudice to any decision which the local planning authority may make. Officers are aware of the master plan for DCH and the hospital's position on the importance of the current application. There have been ongoing negotiations between applicant and the planning authority to resolve matters outstanding between the parties, which the applicant was made aware of in pre-application advice. And the case officer has been liaising closely with the applicant over timescales. Most recently, the application was intended for presentation to the Northern Area Committee at its scheduled meeting of the 18th of August, a meeting that was subsequently cancelled. The officer's report is being finalised and the application will be considered at the next available committee meeting, which is scheduled to take place on the 15th of September of this month. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh. I hope you're happy with that, Councillor Ireland.
I am, as long as the September meeting isn't going to be cancelled.
Ooh, don't think so. It's quite a long one coming up, I think. The next question comes from Councillor Robin Legg.
Thank you, Chairman. The first of my two questions is as follows. It looks inevitable that a sum of nearly 21.8 million will need to be returned to the Treasury as the unallocated portion of funding made available by the government for small business grants and retail, hospitality and leisure grants during the COVID crisis. Whilst acknowledging the efforts made by many authorities and MPs to get 5% of the original funds usable on a discretionary and more flexible basis, it's now clear that 5% was not enough. What work is this authority presently doing to engage with Dorset's members of Parliament so that they can lobby on our behalf for a larger part of that 21.8 million to be used where it is desperately needed to support local businesses?
Thank you. You will receive a response from the portfolio holder for finance, commercial and capital strategy.
Thank you, Chairman, and my thanks to Councillor Legg for the question. The sum in question is based on the receipt from government of £134 million. However, Dorset Council calculated that in fact we had a requirement for 120 million. As yet, government has not quantified why the additional money was sent over. As yet, government have not given us a method to calculate the final position. I'd like to stress that this is a national scheme, and whilst we've been in a positive position, where our councils have found themselves in a negative position. It may be that the final reckoning allows any surplus in one area to fund the shortfall in others. It was always going to be the case that an underspend would occur as some larger organisations, restricted by state aid rules, tend to claim in the areas where their head offices are based. Thanks to council leaders, MPs and national lobbying, a discretionary grant scheme was allowed and calculated as 5% of the actual total grant funding for the area. Therefore, the 5% was as a calculation of 120 million and not the 134 million. In our case, it amounted to just in excess of £6 million. The council has provided numerous reminders via a variety of means to those who did not claim the original small business grant or the retail, hospitality and leisure grant. We were not in a position of forcing people to accept the money, and there are those who decided not to take up the funding, and we'll have to respect their views. Councillor Legg makes a statement that additional funding is required due to desperate need by local business, and if that is the case, we'll need to see the evidence will assist us to lobby for additional support. During the early days of COVID and the grant system, I was dealing with up to 45 phone calls a day, numerous emails from those who, as he describes, were desperate to obtain funding. In the last month or so, this has dwindled to the odd email and call. Certainly no more than one or two a week, and I am able to direct them to suitable assistance where possible. Any new scheme or assistance will need to be a national scheme, as I'm sure you're aware the cost of COVID to Dorset has left us unable to consider any scheme that would give further stress on the budget other than that funded by central government. May I ask Councillor Legg to let me have the evidence that he has, and I give him my assurance that I will follow it up. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Suttle.
Can I follow that up with a supplementary? I'm rather disappointed in that response because I felt after reading his comments, which were reported in the Dorset Echo, that he was at least willing to go into bat for us and actually ask for more money and to elicit the support of Dorset's members of Parliament to try and get some of that 21.8 million that we're going to be handing back. And I think most people will be disappointed to hear what he's had to say this evening, because I think that's a rather negative response. And we really want to be trying to help businesses, because you can walk down the high street and see the shops that are closing.
Excuse me, Councillor Legg. This is a question is?
Well, the question is why suddenly has he changed his attitude and become rather negative in the way in which he's responding to this? Because it seems to me that we ought to be pushing at a door rather than holding back.
Thank you.
Am I allowed to respond, Chairman?
Yes, you are.
Well, I don't believe that I've changed. I think one of the things that you are miscalculating is the amount. As I've said, it's not based on 134 million, it's based on 120. If you do the sums, you'll come back to 7, which is the maximum we can get. And I've always said that I will fight for any business that needs additional funding, no matter what the problem. And in the last sentence, I specifically said to you that if you give me the evidence of the people who are suffering, I will follow and bat to the very end to get them the funding they need. I don't believe that I've let down anybody during this period. I've really tried hard to ensure that funding has gone out, and Dorset Council itself has been one of the largest councils or largest sums of money that any council, I think we're 5th in the country, have had to deliver. And I believe we've done an excellent job, and this is down to numerous people working very, very hard, very, very long. But what I want to reiterate to you, Councillor Legg, is that I have not changed. There's no U-turn here. I will bat very, very hard for anybody who needs money, no matter what, and I still do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Suttle. Perhaps Councillor Legg can let you have the evidence and we can clear up this matter. Thank you. Councillor Legg, you have another question.
Thank you, Chairman. A different question this time, and it's about the Independent Remuneration Panel report. The appendix to the Independent Remuneration Panel report sets out a long list of things which the 6 new lead members might be called upon to do in support of Cabinet colleagues. At the present time, with so many suffering financial hardship as a result of the coronavirus pandemic, there's an even greater need to justify these posts and their associated costs. What therefore will be done to monitor the performance of those appointed so that at the end of 12 months a clear, transparent and public account is given of their work in relation to each of those elements in the appendix?
Thank you, Councillor Legg. You will receive a response from the Leader of the Council, Councillor Flower.
Thank you very much, Chairman. At full council on the 18th of February, members voted in favour of the recommendation from the cross-party task and finish group to support the governance review, which included the appointment of up to 6 lead members by the Leader of Council. Therefore, the principle and purpose of lead members has the broad support of members. As previously mentioned at the members' briefing on the proposed governance review at the end of January, the involvement of lead members is well proven and exists in many councils across the country who operate an executive governance cabinet arrangement. Can I refer you to the Constitution, which sets out the detailed role of the lead member, and you've already mentioned that's in the appendix. I've already announced this evening who the lead members are, importantly their individual roles in support of 3 of the portfolio holders. Also on the agenda, members will be asked to support the Independent Remuneration Panel recommendation, which includes a special responsibility allowance for lead members. The role of lead members will be time consuming, and like any role with additional responsibilities, will be scrutinised on a routine basis to ensure the performance of the council does not undermine the delivery of council plan or the annual revenue and capital budgets. The council does face massive challenges for the remainder of the term. Having the additional member capacity and support of the cabinet will be vital if we are to bring about the transformation necessary to maintain balanced budgets without the loss of service and to achieve the maximum benefits from unitary local government. The importance of transparency in the way we as members carry out the business of this council cannot be overstated. However, this will be, of course, applied to all aspects of the council, rather than just the ones centering on lead members in particular, as been suggested by Councillor Legg. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Flower.
Can I ask a supplementary of Councillor Flower in that case, and thank him for his reply? But having listened to what he said, I take that to mean that there is to be no evaluation at the end of 12 months of what each of these lead members has done to support their colleagues on the cabinet. Is that correct?
If I can come back, Chairman, I think Robin's trying to put words in my mouth, which isn't going to work. As I've said, all aspects of what councillors who get special responsibility allowances do, chairman of committees, cabinet, and then now lead members, will come under scrutiny more so than other members of the council. So my view is that we will look at all of them rather than just centre around the 6 lead members. That is something new for this council, but it's, as I said earlier on in my answer to Robin's question, is something that's well embedded and model across the whole country.
Thank you for that, Councillor Flower. Question number 7 was in fact from Councillor Beryl Ezard. I understand that Councillor Ezard is having problems joining the meeting online, and so the question will be read out by Councillor Ireland. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'll try and do my best, and I'll try and edit on the fly because Councillor Laddiard apparently agrees with Councillor Orford that DWP still exists. So it's a question for Councillor Beryl Ezard. She's ward member for Wareham. So issues with the recycling collections. On behalf of my ward community, I wish to complain of the woeful lack of service over a 6-week period, brackets 3 collections, when no collections were made during the hottest spell of this summer. Having been in close contact with the Wareham depot and defended the service many times, stating to folk of the exemplary service that the staff have done throughout the COVID-19 lockdown, I was being told in July, August of staff absences, sickness and holidays, plus truck breakdowns. This is all very familiar, isn't it? In circumstances with no spare capacity and backup plan. Why? It is painfully obvious that the service is lacking in maintenance and adequately trained staff, with common knowledge that we lose HGV drivers to neighbouring councils as the wages are better than Dorset councils. This is and will cause continuing problems with keeping staff and particularly HGV drivers. When I ask, will this be addressed? Also, when we encourage our communities to access the Dorset Council website, local folk find it unhelpful, not updated, or gives inaccurate information, causing more issues, usually then calling the local members with a complaint after complaint. Can we have an update on this too, please?
Thank you, Councillor Ireland, and you will receive a response from Councillor Haynes.
Thank you, Councillor Ireland. I think we've kind of raised this already, haven't you, in your questions, and it's early days for me, but obviously I want to find out if this is the case, what went wrong. So I'll read you the response, but I would like to come back, as you suggested, to the next full council with a bit more information on the situation. The review of drivers' pay across the Dorset Waste Services has now been completed, and the local market increments have been applied to all driver roles. There are currently 2 driver roles actively being recruited into the Wareham depot to fill vacant posts, along with other driver roles across all depots. Now that the depot refurbishment has been completed and the application to increase the number of LGV vehicles located at Wareham depot has been accepted, an additional hire vehicle has been located there to assist. The waste pages on Dorset Council's website are regularly reviewed and updated where necessary. Recent improvements to the online missed reporting now provides residents with details of service disruptions that have affected their collections, along with details on when we will return to rectify the problem. In addition, Dorset Council's services are currently investigating an in-cab technology that will allow for live collection information to be shared with residents through our online forms in future. For those residents who do not have access to the internet, particularly the elderly, there is always assistance on the Dorset For You helpline, where operators will be able to access all the website information, report missed bins and provide details of service disruptions. Thank you, Councillor Ezard, for your question, and be assured that I will be looking into this matter, particularly in Wareham.
Thank you, Councillor Hames. We have the final question, number 8, also to be announced from Councillor Ireland on behalf of Councillor Ezard.
Yes, thank you. So this is about electricity charging points. And for background, Councillor Ezard actually has a Nissan Leaf, which is a fully electric vehicle. So electric charging points for vehicles. Where and when is Dorset Council going to show the way by putting in electric charging points on car parks? I know there has been some work done in encouraging buying electric vehicles, but we have to follow on to make it easy for folk to recharge their vehicles within the Dorset Council area. There are very few at the present time. When will Dorset Council be lobbying the motor manufacturers and government? We need to bring them together to enable a universal charging system, as now most makes of vehicles have their own charging machines. This does make it difficult to decide if it is viable to choose a system that may go out of date within a few years. However, we must not be daunted by the fact that if we don't, we will be unable to achieve our carbon footprint and air pollution reduction significantly. We are all conscious of our climate change and ecological emergency commitment. We need some action now. Where, when, and how many are Dorset Council prepared to install in the next year? Please give it this some resource, as we need to demonstrate we have an action plan for the community to change to cleaner and greener electric vehicles. And I'll leave the rest out. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we have a response, please, from the portfolio holder for Highways, Travel and Environment.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you for Councillor Ezard for the question. I'd like to reassure all members that I share Councillor Ezard's sense of urgency on this matter and have been working closely with officers to ensure that we are able to meet national and local expectations about electric vehicle charge point provision as soon as we can. We intend to place an order with a private sector company called Joju very shortly to install 53 fast charge point sockets in 23 car parks, including Remstone Centre car park in Church Street, Wareham. We will also replace the 5 rapid chargers we already have, which have regrettably not been as reliable as we'd have liked in recent years. I've recently signed an executive decision notice to that effect. We plan to start installing them this autumn, which is where we are now. I'd like to be more specific, but the final details are still being worked out. The good news is that this company is willing to invest in Dorset and is installing the charge points at no cost to the council. With regard to ensuring that systems are universal, Councillor Ezard is right to raise that point. There are 2 things that we are doing. Firstly, we have partnered with a number of local authorities in the Central Southern Framework, which covers most of the south of England, with a single charging network. All of our new charge points I mentioned will have the most commonly used connection types. Secondly, we are working with partners in the subnational transport body to make this point to government. It is not a problem that is unique to Dorset, but one we must take very seriously, and I'm sure you'll appreciate there is only so much we can do at a local level, hence the need to work closely with other local authorities on this matter. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Bryan. That all sounds very exciting. Are you happy with that response, Councillor Ireland?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. We now move to agenda item 13, appointments to committees and election of chairman and vice chairman. I'd like to ask the Corporate Director, Legal and Democratic, to introduce the report. Jonathan, please.
Good evening, members. I will keep this introduction brief. As you will be aware, appointments to committees and the appointment of councillors who are to chair committees are confirmed at the annual council meeting. Seats on committees are allocated in accordance with political proportionality. So each political group gets a share of the places on the council's committee in proportion to its share of the overall membership of the council. Chairman, there are three recommendations in this report. The first two, I think, are very straightforward in that they deal with the allocation of committee seats and appointments to committees in accordance with proportionality as nominated by the political group leaders. The second recommendation then gives a delegation to enable in-year changes. Slightly more complex then are the nominations of committee chairman and vice chairman for 2020-21. The nominations that we've received so far are set out in Appendix 4 to the report.
Thank you very much. I've got here Councillor Wolf to speak.
I'm happy to follow Councillor Flower.
Thank you very much. So please, would you like to make your proposals,
Yes.
Councillor Flower?
Thank you very much, Chairman, and thank you to Jonathan for introducing the report. And I'd like to thank all of the other group leaders for the way we've gone about dealing with the membership of committees and the chairs, vice chairs, and the outside bodies this year. It's been very constructive, very helpful, and as Nick said earlier on, it's another example of how we've worked across the chamber and dealing with some of the key things in this council. And I'd like to move. There are three parts of this. As Jonathan said, the appointment to committees, the outside bodies, and the chairs and vice chairs. I'd like to move all three on block, please, Chairman.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder, please?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm happy to second those on block, but if Councillor Nick Ireland is seconding them on block, I'll defer to Nick Ireland.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ireland.
Yes, thank you, Peter. Can I speak? Sorry. Yeah, I was proposing to second A and B, but I'd like to amend C if that's possible.
Chairman, as I seconded, I'm seconding on block, and I'm keeping it as that, and I would like that to be put forward. Any amendment will have to be done as a separate item.
Thank you very much. Would you like to describe your amendment, please, Councillor Ireland?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So the nominations for committee and vice chairman positions, I'm happy with all of them, apart from one in particular. As people may remember, it's going back a bit, but back in May last year, the very first council meeting of Dorset Council, when it was quite memorable because we declared a climate emergency. But one of the other things we did, and I believe it was Councillor Weller who proposed it at the time, was that the Harbours Committee is different from most of the others, and that it has external members. And she proposed at the time, and this is allowed by the Constitution, that instead of full council determining who should be chairman and vice chairman, that the committee itself at its first meeting should nominate the chairman and vice chairman and decide. And I would like to make the same proposal this year, please.
Thank you, Councillor Ireland. I must say I'm minded to insist that all these positions are agreed this evening.
Well, Chairman, I've made an amendment, and I believe that's my right. Thank you.
Okay. So do you have a seconder for your proposal?
Councillor Weller here. I'd like to second, please.
Okay.
All right. Okay, fine.
And so this is a specific item, isn't it, under item C?
Yes, correct. My proposal is that they all are approved en bloc, apart from Harbours, which is omitted. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think we'd better have a vote on this then. Sorry. Councillor Weller, were you saying something?
No, I hadn't spoken, only to second Councillor Ireland's amendment.
Okay.
I'd be very happy to speak if I was allowed to, but...
I think we better follow our little graphs on this one. So you are entitled to speak, Councillor Ireland, for 5 minutes. Did you want to claim that?
I don't need to add anything. No, I'm happy to defer to Councillor Willow if she wishes to speak.
Chairman, there is a point of order by Councillor Lacey Clark.
I beg your pardon?
There is a point of order by Councillor Lacey Clark in the chat box.
Okay. Would Councillor Lacey Clark explain why he's made a point of order?
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry. I believe last year when we did make this change, it actually goes against our constitution and our legal recommendations. Therefore, if we wish to do this again, I believe we would actually have to abandon standing orders in order to do it. Otherwise, it does, I believe, go against our current standing orders and agreed constitution.
Thank you. Jonathan, are you there anywhere? Could you comment on this, please?
Chairman, I think that's exactly what you would be doing if you accepted Councillor Ireland's motion amendment. You would be agreeing to step away from standing orders and to make an exception for this particular committee. So I think Councillor Lacey Clark is quite correct. You would be stepping away from standing orders, but you would be doing so on the basis of the amendment as put.
Thank you. So would it be appropriate for me to ask for a vote on amending standing orders?
Chairman, I think you can deal with it on the basis of the amendment as put. I think everyone understands that it is in effect to suspend standing orders in relation to the appointment to the Harbours Committee. But I think the next step is first of all to establish if any other members wish to speak on the amendment before you move to a vote.
Thank you. So do I have anyone else wishing to speak on this proposed amendment?
Councillor Nick
I would like to speak if it's possible, Councillor Apothecary. Sorry, that's Councillor Weller.
Yes, I can see. Yes, I think you can. You've got 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chairman. It won't take 3 minutes. Last year we did suspend standing orders. I appreciate that we don't have to do that again this year, but at that time I did point out that we had 4 independent members on the Harbours Committee, and if this vote is taken at this committee now, that denies them the right to have their vote. And if you recall, you actually attended the first Harbours Committee and chaired that meeting and asked for a vote for chairman at that time, and I would hope that that would happen again. I think it's a shame that we deny those independent members a right to vote, and I would ask members to respect the fact that these people give up a good deal of time. They have a huge amount of knowledge, and it is right that they are respected in this way. So I'd like to ask you to suspend standing orders and to support the amendment, please.
Thank you, Councillor Weller. Next we have, I've got Councillor Wolf on my list. Did you want to speak, Councillor Wolf, or is that you're seconded?
I did want to speak. I wanted to cover the point about that seems to be going round the shibboleth that this is somehow unfair and unusual. The Pensions Committee, this body appoints the chair and vice chair of the Pensions Committee, and the Pensions Committee at its first meeting has a number of members who are not taking part in that because Dorset Council is the overarching responsible body for the Pensions Committee, and it is similar for the Harbours Committee, We are the overarching body that is responsible for it. We value the work of the independents, but it is our responsibility to identify, nominate and vote on a chair. And I think we should avoid changing constitution unless we absolutely have to. I certainly feel that we were somewhat bounced into it last year, and I believe this is the correct body for making that decision, and we should keep it at that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm getting just a little bit confused on my list. Please bear with me. I have Councillor Sarah Williams has asked to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Poffrey. I think everything that I was going to say has been said, so I will decline to speak any further.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Councillor O'Leary.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to agree with Councillor Peter Wharf. The independent members on the Harbour Committee, I will remind people, are appointed. You know, they are not elected. Therefore, what you can find is that we have a position where elected members on the Harbour Committee can be overruled by independent members joining up with a minority of elected member on the Harbour Committee, and I don't think it's democratically fair on that account. We need to have a vote here, I believe, and I agree with Peter Wharf.
Thank you. Councillor Knox.
Yes, I was going to add my support to Councillor Wharf and Councillor O'Leary. We do have loads of wonderful partnership organisations, but actually this is a statutory responsibility of Dorset Council. Independent members are absolutely warmed to join organisations like this, but this is the place. This is the place to make those appointments. So I'm just saying it is right in governance terms for that appointment to be made today.
Thank you. Councillor Pipe.
Thank you, Chairman. You know, having been bounced into this situation last year, you know, we now find ourselves in the same situation where members attempt to bypass the constitution in order to gain political advantage. I totally agree with what Councillor O'Leary and Peter Wharf have said, and I say that we take this vote here and decide it tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Kimber.
Thank you, Chair. I served on the Harbour Committee and chaired it for over many years. The independent members are an important, integral part of that committee. I believe.
Oh, I think we might have lost Councillor Kimber.
Chairman, I believe Councillor
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, I served on that committee for many years, acting as a chair for many times, and I was there when we introduced the independent members. The independent members are integral to that committee, and I believe will feel absolutely left out if this decision goes through tonight. I would urge you that this committee, and this is slightly different, it's a special case. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Took.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to comment on the idea that this is going against the Constitution. The Constitution provides for appointment by the full council unless this council determines otherwise. So what we're looking to do is perfectly in line with the Constitution. So I really don't think we need to try and claim that this is breaking the Constitution. It absolutely is not. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Quayle.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm just responding to Councillor to the last point made. This is absolutely the democratic process in elected members, because we are elected members. The people of Dorset voted, and this is exactly the position or the place to make this decision. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think I've invited everyone that wanted to speak. So I think, sorry, did I miss someone? Okay, so we are going to move to the vote, please, on the amendment regarding standing orders for the amendment. Is everybody clear? Yes.
I'm going to post the vote now in the chat bar, which is in respect of the amendment proposed by Councillor Nick Ireland.
Okay, thank you. Please vote now.
Chairman, I have no thing in my chat bar. I've got one on the phone, but I don't know if it's going to work.
Graham, do you want to verbally say how you wish to vote on the amendment? Do you wish to vote for or against? Graham.
I'm going to try it on the phone first. Susan, it's allowed me to do the vote on the phone.
Okay, thank you, Graham. The votes are still coming in, Chairman. I've received 73 responses. Is there anybody else who has not been able to vote? Okay, Chairman, I will announce the result of the vote. The proposal has been lost, 45 votes against and 28 in favour of the amendment. The amendment is lost.
Thank you, Susan. So we will return, please, to the original proposal, which I believe was seconded by 2 people. And we will, I don't think we need to vote on this. I think it's been approved. We haven't had anybody against any of the proposals. Could you confirm that, please, Councillor?
Chairman, I think we do still need to vote on it procedurally.
Okay.
All we've done is say no to the amendment.
Right, so we're taking it all en bloc, please, and please vote now.
Chairman, I will post that in the chat panel just now for you.
Thank you. Oh, hang on.
It's there. It's posted now.
Thank you.
Chairman, can I ask a question on this, please?
Yes.
Just to be clear, the voting says to approve recommendations A, B and C as amended. Can we be reminded of what that amendment is, please?
I don't
it says no. It's as a substantive motion. The amendment was lost. You are now voting on A, B and C as proposed by Councillor Flower and seconded.
Okay. However, what it says in the body of the voting panel is A, B and C as amended. So that's why I wanted the clarification.
Yes,
thank you.
Quite right. Thank you.
The responses are still coming in, Chairman. Just a few more to go.
Thank you, Councillor Coombs, for your input on that. Councillor Brooks.
So we actually need the wording right before we can vote. So it needs to be voted again on, doesn't it?
Susan, could I ask what was the amendment that was what's the amendment? I see no amendment.
The amendment was the previous vote regarding the Harbours Committee.
Okay, got you.
I think it's let Councillor Les Fry. I think it's a little bit confusing on that last vote. Susan, you may wish to reword that one because I'm not sure if people are unsure if it's an amendment or not an amendment.
This is not an amendment. This is a substantive motion. Clearly, what I can see is perhaps something different to what you are seeing, because my form makes it clear that it's a substantive vote.
Chairman, if I can intervene. So members, at the top of your page, you're seeing it says appointments to committees approve A, B and C substantive motion to approve a recommendations A, B and C as amended as a substantive motion. But below, where it says please review the motion below and select how you wish to vote, it's cut off after to approve recommendation A, B and C as amended. So what you need to take account of is the bar at the top. So this is a substantive motion. It hasn't been amended. It's A, B and C as you see on your papers. So you're either voting for A, B and C on block, or against, or abstaining. I hope that's clear.
Much clearer. Thanks, Matt.
Okay, and I can announce the result. All the votes have come in, and that is carried. 60 votes in favour, 7 against, and 6 abstentions.
Thank you, Susan.
Chairman, you have a right to speak from Councillor Les Fry.
I think sorry, yes, do.
Point to Councillor Les Fry, the point has been covered, thank you.
I thought it had, Les, which is why I didn't speak to you, and I think Councillor Coombs the same, is that correct?
Yes, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. So we are on agenda item 14, review of members' allowances. And I will ask Councillor Flower to introduce the report and propose the recommendations.
Thank you very much, Chairman. The Coven report reminds us that the original member allowance scheme was approved by the Dorset Shadow Council at its meeting in February 2019, and that the scheme would be reviewed after a year. Following the decision by the leader to recommend that the council bring forward the planned governance review by a year, it was timely when reviewing the scheme that the revised governance arrangements could be included. The outcome of this evidence-based review has resulted in 3 strands to the recommendation before us this evening, and I'm reminded that the governance review includes a cross-party task and finish group who at the first and only meeting agreed the proposed structure. The recommendations were brought to the 18th of February full council and included in the consultation, which were approved. The recommendation is in 6 parts, not 3, 6 parts, and should be supported by members. Otherwise, the principle of relying on the independence of an independent remuneration panel may well not comply with the Local Government Members' Allowances Regulations 2003, which requires councils to set up an IRP when setting members' allowances, and having done so, quote, must have due regard to the recommendations of the Independent Remunerations Panel. Even though the recommendations include an overall increase in members' allowances when compared to what we've been the scheme costs now abolished by the districts and boroughs and the county council, the unitary council will still have a reduction, if this goes through tonight, will still have a reduction of over £300,000 a year in member allowances. However, I am aware of the concern that this time the members are being recommended to take an increase of £500 on the basic allowance. As a departure from accepting the IRP's recommendation of that amendment, which is normal practice, I suggest members vote separately on part 1 and en bloc on the remaining part 2 to 6. Should members decide by a majority not to accept part 1 of the recommendation as a personal choice, then the basic would remain at £13,000 per annum as set out in the members' allowance scheme approved by members in February 2019 full council. As for the other major change, the SRA for lead members, the IRP are satisfied that the role will involve at least as much additional work and responsibility as for a committee chairman. The role of a lead member will be time-consuming in the delivery of the council's plan and the annual revenue and capital budgets. The involvement of member support to the cabinet is well established across the country. In answer to the earlier member's question, the council does face massive challenges for the remainder of the term. Having the additional member capacity in support of the cabinet will be vital if we are to bring about the transformation necessary to maintain balanced budgets without a loss of services and to achieve the maximum benefit from unity local government. There is another very important benefit to be had from Sandy-based allowance scheme. Without allowances, it would have, as it's been in the case in the past, been a disadvantage to those who want to be involved in maintaining local democracy. This is particularly important for those of working age, perhaps with young families, who do not have the benefit of independent income or pension. We must surely offer the opportunity now and in the future so that we can have a membership of this council representing all age groups and social backgrounds. Members, in conclusion, can I urge you all to maintain the accepted practice by agreeing the IRP's recommendation before us this evening, and therefore I will therefore move the recommendation set out in the Coven report, subject to voting on 1 separately and recommendations 2 to 6 en bloc. And at the same time, I'd like to record my thanks on behalf of the council for a really well presented evidence-based report by the IRP. And in conclusion, Chairman, can I ask that this be a recorded vote, please, on both of the items I've mentioned? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Flower. Do we have a seconder for this proposal?
You do, Chairman. Councillor Peter Wharf. I would be willing to second, and I second effectively the amended proposals. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, members, you've heard the proposal to vote on part 1 separately and part 2 to 6 all together. Going down the list of requests to speak, I'll start with Councillor Wharf. Did you want to say anything else there, Councillor Wharf?
May I reserve my right to come back as a seconder at the close? Thank you.
You certainly can. Councillor Ireland.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'd like to point out, I'd like Jonathan's opinion on something, because I do want to speak on this, but perhaps he should comment first. The report in front of us is the agenda on page 69. It's a summary of the recommendations. I took legal advice last week where I was told that basically we can accept all the recommendations or we can take some and reject others. The issue I have is that item 1.1.1, which is the basic allowance, does not adequately reflect the recommendation of the IRP. That sort of maps to the recommendation on page 88, which is 16.1. However, that includes 2 recommendations, which are 2 separate things. And therefore, voting on 1.1.1 does not make sense because it doesn't include 1.1.2. And so depending on his point of view, I either want to continue talking on this or I wish to move an amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Jonathan, can you help with this one?
Chairman, I think the tidiest way of dealing with this so that all members understand fully what is being said and what is being proposed is for Councillor Ireland to propose his amendment, and then members will be clear about exactly what it is they're being asked to vote upon.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ireland.
Okay. I'm happy to do that. I'll continue. So I have prepared for this. You may be surprised now. I've now had the dubious pleasure of being interviewed twice by the Independent Remuneration Panel. Firstly, back in the Shadow Council period, when I gave the views of my Liberal Democrat colleagues on Dorset County Council, and more recently for the report that's in front of us today, when I presented the opinions of the current Lib Dem cohort. On both occasions, they listened attentively and thanked me for attending. On both occasions, the final report failed to take any of my input through to the final recommendations. I know that most of my fellow councillors agree that we need to attract a younger demographic to this council, yet the current system of allowances and meeting schedules, combined with a huge number of hours that the job requires in order that we fully represent our constituents, precludes most salary employees from doing so. If I cast my eye around the virtual chamber, I wish I could, but I can't see you all, most members are either retired or self-employed. The IRP has been told this by all parties represented here, but steadfastly refuses to acknowledge the solution. I fully support the process of an independent body making recommendations to this council. There should be a transparent process of determining what our salary is, and yes, it is a salary. We all pay national insurance and income tax on this. However, the panel makes recommendations only. We can't, for example, change the recommended allowance to 25k or whatever number we think we should be paid, but neither do we have to accept what they recommend. And that's the crucial difference. The past 6 months has seen our country and our county experience a social and economic crisis, the like of which most have never seen. And I'm proud to note that this council, one of the major employers in Dorset, has led by example and neither furloughed nor laid off staff. But that is not the experience for thousands of our residents. Many were furloughed and then lost their jobs once the government scheme started to wind down. The less fortunate lost their jobs almost immediately. The self-employed have seen the fruits of their labours vanish overnight, and many have closed their businesses permanently. Families who have never needed to claim benefit are now struggling to survive on universal credit. The number of people who are having difficulty paying council tax, possibly the highest in England, has rocketed, and many have become homeless. Those who recently left school or graduated have the prospect of chasing the few job opportunities that exist with little chance of success. Already busy food banks have been overwhelmed by demand. We are in the envious position tonight of being able to accept the recommendation of the IRP and award ourselves a pay rise, around about 4% if my maths are correct. Meanwhile, across the county, thousands are being asked to take pay cuts or otherwise lose their jobs. To accept this increase would be a gross demonstration of insensitivity and a lack of awareness of the exceptionally difficult circumstances many of our residents find themselves in as a result of COVID-19. And I urge all members, regardless of party affiliation or creed, to look to their conscience and do the right thing by rejecting the proposed increase to the basic allowance. And that's what my proposal is.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder for this
Yes,
proposal?
Councillor Postlethwaite. Yes. I would love to second that. Councillor Lacey Clark.
Yeah.
To show that it really is cross-party. If I may speak on it as well as I'm seconding it.
You have minutes.
Thank you so much. Put my camera on then so you can all see me. I was lucky enough to be elected to the Dorset Council, which actually had an instant effect on my income. I was from a very, very low income background. I would guess probably more so than most people on the council. And I've had to work very hard for everything I had. I've chosen to give up my job, 90% of it, in order to be a councillor because the amount of time it actually takes to do so. And I think it is really, really important that we do have enough money that we can feed ourselves whilst working full-time as a councillor. £13,000 does absolutely cover that. I don't think we should be taking an increase of £500 when actually that's more than our staff are getting as an increase, because there is no way I can say that I work harder than our staff. That's not something that I could ever sit comfortably with. I do, however, think that it is important that we are fairly remunerated, and that's why I would like to take this chance to remind all members that you do not have to accept your allowance. If you do not need it, you are welcome to not take it and save the taxpayer that money, or take it and distribute it to local charities. Also, if you are not attending all the meetings you should be, I think you should really have a good look at yourself and think, should I be taking 100% of my allowance if I'm only attending 10% of meetings? And so I'd like to leave that for councillors to think with, and I would like to support Councillor Ireland's amendment that we do not issue this £500 extra raise for ourselves.
Okay. Thank you very much. A whole list of people. Councillor Sutton.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I absolutely want to speak on this amendment, but before doing so, I do need to clarify something in order to establish the scope of my comments. The Green Party alerted you and several people that we wanted to submit an amendment ourselves some days ago, but that doesn't actually reflect on this particular amendment. It's about the remuneration of lead members. So my first question is, before addressing this amendment, is will I be allowed to subsequently submit an amendment in respect of the remuneration of lead members?
Which is
We appear to have a poor signal for the chairman. Could I ask Jonathan Mayer to comment on that, please?
Thank you, Chief Executive. I think it would be perfectly in order for Councillor Sutton to move her amendment once this issue is out of the way.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry to detain you with that, but there's been rather a complicated exchange of emails over the last 48 hours on that subject. So I'll be extremely brief about this amendment. The Green Group supports this amendment very much and agrees with an awful lot of what's previously been said. But we do have to say that it hasn't been an easy decision. On the one hand, no offence intended, but we are a very white and over 2/3 male, I don't include myself in that, and most importantly, old bunch of councillors. Recent equalities data suggests that 28% of us are under 20, only 28% of us are under 55. We really do need to reflect on that part. I'm going to say that again. So that means 72% of us, that's not me actually, are over 55. We desperately need to attract younger working councillors, especially to better reflect the diversity of our county, and the level of our basic allowance is a key factor in this. On the other hand though, with so many of our residents struggling more than ever to make ends meet, now is not the right time to give ourselves a pay rise. That's just the way it is. There already exists a mechanism whereby the rise in the councillor's basic allowance is linked to that of staff. And it's important at this difficult time that we show solidarity with our staff. Many thanks.
Councillor Roberts.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to perhaps register that those of us who are elected to represent the former district and county councils, in my case WDDC and Dorset County Council, were receiving basic allowances which totalled 2 years ago 16,500, with similar or possibly fewer meetings as dual hatters. But we accepted the independent body's recommendations at the start of Dorset Council of an allowance of 13,000. I do, however, have a real concern that if the value of the allowance does not keep pace with other costs, we will struggle to attract younger working age councillors who need recompense for loss of earnings. And I follow Councillor Sutton in saying that we do need to be more inclusive and not put barriers in the way of diversity and inclusion. However, this is not the time to raise the allowance. Thank you.
I think if we're following a thread, because we can't quite hear the chairman currently, that it's Councillor Laura Miller.
Thank you, Chief Executive. I just want to clarify, if I'd like to speak to the amendment. Are we speaking to the issue around lead members' allowances separately, or should we speak separately?
The item under discussion is for the increase of in our allowance.
Thank you.
Everybody's allowance.
Thank you, Chair. That's really helpful clarification. I think that I agree with much of what's been said. I would make the point that, and I'll make it perhaps in a slightly stronger way later on in the debate around lead members' allowances, but we need desperately to attract a more diverse range of councillors. Not that we aren't all capable of doing our jobs, we're all, you know, really committed to what we do here. But representation matters, diversity matters, and we need to be able to make sure that people are properly paid in order that they do this job. Because if you do it properly, it is a job, and it's a really hard job. But we should not put ourselves above our officers who are working incredibly hard, who always work incredibly hard. So I'd like to thank the leader for announcing that this would be a free vote. I think that's really, really important. There's an amendment. I'll support the amendment because I was going to vote against the increase in allowance anyway. I think it's the right thing to do. And I'd like to speak later on the lead members' allowances, if I may, Chair. Many thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Jesperson.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I was hoping to speak on the question of the lead member allowances, so I will echo what Councillor Miller's just said. I was going to vote against the £500 increase in any case, and I again thank you very much to the leader for allowing us a free vote on that. And I'd like to come back and speak about the special responsibility allowance for lead members when we get to that part of the debate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Stella Jones.
Yeah, I was going to second Councillor Ireland's proposal, but I'm very pleased to hear that most people are going to accept that proposal, that amendment. And I would like to speak on the lead members later on.
Thank you. Councillor Fry.
Chair, my comments have already been aired. Thank you.
Thank you. I understand that we need 3 members for a recorded vote.
Chairman, as seconder to the amendment, I'm very happy to echo the leader's request for a recorded vote, and I'm sure the proposer will probably like to do the same.
All I can say is I do need 3 names, so
I'm happy to do so. It's Councillor Ireland.
Okay, thank you. Have we got that, Susan?
Yes, we've got
Well,
that. Thank you, Chairman.
I think we've discussed this issue quite well. So perhaps we could put it to the vote then, Susan.
Yes.
That's just the first part of the recommendations. As
The vote is now in the chat panel, Chairman.
Thank you very much.
Just a few more votes to come in, Chairman. I think we're nearly there. Is there anybody who cannot vote? Would they like to let me know now?
Got a very old screen here.
Val, are you able to vote?
I did vote.
Thank you.
Hello, Susan. This is Hayley from Democratic Services. We haven't received votes at the current moment from Barry Gorringe, Derek Beer, or Stella Jones, and Councillor Trite. Perhaps those councillors might like to give verbal votes.
I voted, Stella Jones, I voted on the original one.
Thank you.
I'm voting for.
Bill Trite here. I voted, and the screen told me that I had my vote submitted, and I voted. Do you want my actual vote, which was in favour of the amendment?
Thank you.
Thank you. Those have come through now. I'm sorry, I still haven't got the ones from Derek Beer, Stella Jones, or Councillor Trite, but we have got Councillor Gorringe's now.
Thank you. We have actually.
This is Stella Jones. I voted on the thing, and I also said I would vote verbally. I've voted for. So that's right. I voted.
I can declare the result of the vote because even if we haven't got votes there, it is a majority. So it was 61 votes in favour of the amendment, 12 against, and only 2 abstentions. So the amendment is carried.
Thank you. Okay. So we will then move along to the other 2 aspects of these recommendations, which have been proposed and seconded by Councillor Flower and Councillor Wolf. There was a suggestion from, I think it was Councillor Sutton, of requesting an amendment. Would you like to please outline your amendment, Councillor Sutton?
Many thanks, Madam Chair. A question for Jonathan first. Shall I do this in relation to recommendations 2 and 3 on page 67 or recommendation 16.2 on page 88? If you're with me. I know.
I don't think that.
I think it's easiest, Chairman, if we keep this to recommendations 2 and 3 on page 69.
Okay, great. Okay, in that case, on behalf, in behalf of the Green Group, I'm proposing that this council does not adopt recommendations 2 and 3. Given the weight of the vote of the previous amendment, I'd like to think this one's quite straightforward, because if we're not willing to accept spending £40,000 on, spread across all members, then to spend a significantly greater sum on 6 members would not seem like very sensible to me, or very consistent. But we'll see. So we appreciate that some cabinet roles are extremely demanding and have been particularly so in recent months, and we understand why the majority group would wish to appoint lead members to assist them. However, having paid due regard to the recommendations of the remuneration panel, we do not agree that these roles should be remunerated for the following reasons. On page 70, there's a reference to these roles helping us to address new and urgent priorities. There will always be new and urgent priorities, but 82 councillors and 7,000 officers, we're all here to help. Rather than paying a new tier of individuals extra to, as the report says on page 78, master background papers and influence cabinet members, surely this is what we should all be doing, and especially our new overview committees meeting more frequently. First, this would be more democratic. Second, it would make better use of our collective abilities and experience. And third, in these straitened times, it would be £60,000 a year cheaper. As the leaders of the 2 largest groups can confirm, I've been pestering them for months to allocate places on overview and scrutiny committees to members of my group, so we can do more at no additional cost to the council. Spencer has allocated 2 places to us, for which we are really grateful. But if lead members effectively sit between cabinet and these committees, surely this will diminish the influence of these committees. It is also argued that lead members will have a more operational focus. Is that not what we pay 7,000 council staff to do, have an operational focus? In terms of succession planning, what if the political balance changes? We need capable people gaining meaningful responsibility and experience all across the chamber. The ruling group on this council has 52%, only just over half of its members. If lead members are remunerated, 84% of councillors receiving a special responsibility allowance will come from this one group, with almost 2/3 of Conservative councillors receiving an additional allowance. There are a lot of people in this virtual chamber, both willing and able to do more for no additional money. It seems a waste not to use us. Yes, appoint some lead members, if you like, to help, but creating another tier of remunerated members from the majority party is not democratic or cost effective and does not make best use of our collective abilities. For these reasons, I urge members to pass this amendment. Many thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Sutton. Do you have a seconder for this proposed amendment?
I do, Councillor Kelvin Clayton.
Yes, Chair, it's Councillor Kelvin Clayton. I'm prepared to second this amendment.
Thank you. Did you want to speak?
Can I reserve my right to speak at the end of the day debate?
No, you can't actually, Councillor. You need to speak now or use it or lose it, I think it's called.
Fair comment. I would not be supporting this amendment if the new lead members were being drawn from all political parties rather than just the controlling group, if their selection was being based upon knowledge and experience rather than political alliance. The report notes that these new roles are needed to support, quote, additional demands upon the executive leadership and the capacity of individuals to undertake wide-ranging portfolios. These wide-ranging portfolios be best supported by drawing upon the wide-ranging backgrounds of all democratically elected councillors, councillors representing all the residents of Dorset, not the 52% of councillors who come from the controlling group. I accept, however, that we have already agreed this and are only voting today on them receiving a new special responsibility allowance. Therefore, as recommendations 2 and 3 could easily be interpreted as a scheme to reward party loyalty in face of a narrow majority, rather than one that draws upon the skills and experience of all councillors, I urge you to support this amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Clayton. I do believe that Councillor Miller requested to speak on this item when it came up.
Chairman, if I could intervene.
Yes.
You've got a request from the monitoring officer to comment on this. Could Jonathan speak, please?
Yes, of course.
Chairman, thank you very much. So the amendment, as I understand it, is that recommendations 2 and 3 should be deleted. Yes. Understanding Order 17.6, which describes what is a valid amendment to a motion. An amendment is not a valid amendment if the effect is to negate the motion, because members have the opportunity instead simply to vote against the motion. So my understanding was that you intended to take recommendations 2 and 3 together. Yes. If members are opposed to recommendations 2 and 3, they can simply vote against them rather than move an amendment that they be deleted. So no one's deprived from having a say about the matter. It's simply the right way of dealing with this is for members to vote against 2 and 3 rather than to seek an amendment to delete them.
Thank you very much. So it's really just part of the debate, in fact.
That's correct.
Okay. Councillor Miller, did you still want to speak on this?
Yeah, I would, Chairman. Thank you. There's a couple of things that I wanted to say anyway in support of this, and a couple of things that have come up. Firstly, if we're rewarding party loyalty, then I probably wouldn't be on the cabinet, because I kind of tend to speak as I find and not always toe the party line. So I'd just like to make that point. Secondly, I'd like to just sort of tell a little story, a very short story. And when in 2015, I was in the pub and a lot of my friends, we were talking, there were lots of issues that were affecting us. I was on a very low income. I was always working. I was a single parent, but I was working on a low income, and I topped up my income with benefits, and I'm not ashamed about that. I'd had a really tough time. Personal circumstances have been really difficult. My friend said to me, "Why don't you stand?" And I said, "I can't, don't be ridiculous. That's not for people like me. That's not for people like me." They said, no, go on, you could do it. And I said, I can't. It's absolute nonsense. Who's going to look after the kids? I'm a single parent. I can't afford to. Any time that I can afford childcare, I've got to go to work. And they said, well, don't you know anything about this? You get an allowance. And I said, I didn't know anything about this. We get an allowance. And they said, yeah, if you get in, you get an allowance. And I said, wow, okay, that might be possible then. And then when I took on an extra responsibility at Purbeck District Council, it required more of my time. So I had to drop some hours in my lower paid job, and I was able to come off benefits and do my extra responsibilities for the council. Now I'm in a really, really fortunate position that I really didn't expect to be in, of sitting on a cabinet unitary authority, just, you know, some single mother chatting to her friends in the pub didn't think her voice would ever get listened to about affordable housing, about, you know, equality, women's rights, all of those kinds of things. What was it like being a single parent with no money in a rural part of the world? Are we honestly saying that these people, these 6 people who are going to be good at their jobs, should offer generously to help? I'm really glad Councillor Sutton has that capacity, because I don't. If I'm going to do a proper job of work, I need to be paid for it. I need to be recognised for it. And please be under no misapprehensions. My lead members and those of my colleagues are going to do a job of work, and we will see value from them. But we can't just ask them to generously do it out of the kindness of their rich, benevolent hearts, because that's not how this works. That is not how this works. If we want to encourage people in, we pay them for the job that they do. And I'm really surprised, because this was voted on back in February. So I'm sorry if I've sounded a bit personal. Well, I'm not. I am passionate about this. It's really, really, really important. Otherwise, councils across the country are going to be run by rich, retired people, and that is not representation, and that is not democracy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Miller. Interesting point of view. Councillor Jones, Stella Jones?
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Miller in that we need a lot of young people on the council. I was one of the youngest ever on the council. I had children when I was on the council, and we do need to have a council representing young people. However, this is the wrong time to pay extra money to councillors already existing on this council. There are people out there who are having to lose their jobs. They're going to go on to universal credit. They won't be able to pay their mortgages or their rent. And sometimes there are people out there who are earning less than 13,000, which we get as a basic allowance. This is the time for us to pull our reins in and spend the money that we should be spending on children and families, not on members.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Jesperson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The thing is, colleagues, we're not asking us to pull our reins in, we're asking these 6 new lead members to pull their reins in. Why is it reasonable to expect these people who have been given this enormous task to do it for no money? It's notable, and I'm very pleased to confirm this, that a lot of these roles have been given to younger councillors. And we would all support that for a whole range of reasons, not least succession planning, but not surprisingly, it's often the younger members who need financial support. And if we don't offer some recompense for loss of income, we will exclude many talented councillors from the most important roles. And I would suggest that it's that we can't afford to do. We can't afford to exclude people from contributing in these difficult and challenging roles and confining them all to the back benches. And as to the amount of the proposed responsibility allowance, I think this has been considered by the independent review body, who base their advice on information and expertise which we don't have. And if we don't take their advice, the question is, how is this decision to be made? The independent body is there precisely to protect the taxpayers from this becoming a political matter, which I fear it rather has this evening. And finally, if any of us think that these lead members will not earn their keep, I'm absolutely sure that they will. Just let's consider what's coming down the track for Dorset and for Dorset Council. Our cabinet members need support, and we need to put the very best people on the job. So I will be supporting this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jesperson. And I think it's Councillor Parry.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. In many ways, when it comes to the formal adoption of recommendations for councillors, any variation in councillors' allowances, I'm sure many of us will be challenged about the process and may indeed wish such decisions of this nature were not ours to make. But they are, and we need to use a mature judgment that in all good conscience we must deliver our duty to our communities and the sensitivities that surround the implication of the use of council tax. The report makes it clear that there will be no increase in SRAs, special responsible allowances, for the chairman, vice chairman, leader, deputy or cabinet. From a personal experience, I know that stepping up in the former county council had a profound effect on my employment terms and conditions, which resulted in the first instance moving from a full-time to a part-time position, and when I joined the cabinet, relinquishing my permanent part-time role in order to fulfil my commitments and responsibilities to council. SRAs are not structured to completely cover the full income potential from employment sacrificed. Being given the opportunity to serve is a very special privilege, and the balance struck in helping achieve this must be fully respected. I am conscious that running in parallel with elective office may result in the need for some members, particularly those who are younger, who we have spoken about considerably this evening, continuing commitments to private pension contributions, as members are no longer permitted to join any local government scheme. They may also find themselves paying rent and mortgages and meeting care cost obligations. Adjustments of the type proposed can help ensure that we will continue to see a broad representation of background amongst elected members and not descend into a modern day squirearchy. Madam Chairman, may I draw attention to some of the underreported facts about serving on a council. All allowances are subject to both income tax and national insurance at the individual's prevailing rate. Therefore, allowances published in public records should not be viewed as the same amount which might be described as take-home pay. But let us also remember those tax contributions are redistributed elsewhere for the benefit of others in our economic and welfare system, including here in Dorset. Setting of allowances is undertaken by a well-respected, independently assessed strategic framework that, in gathering evidence to support their recommendations, challenges councillors' contributions versus responsibilities by acknowledging what they are foregoing in opportunity in order to undertake public office. This has resulted in a mechanism that, in part, bridges the economic pressure faced by those doing so. The advice and recommendations we should neither seek to unduly influence or dismiss lightly. The lead member role has been independently assessed for SRA purposes. The intention is to create the bandwidth required to accelerate transformation of our services, especially in the post-COVID environment. Recipients will be expected to put in the hours required to deliver outcomes that will make a real difference across the Dorset Council area. Other authorities operating similar structures report positively on these roles. There is an expectation that the impact of their work in driving the transformation agenda will deliver the much needed dividends demanded by council taxpayers. Madam Chairman, for these reasons, I will be supporting the substantive position regarding the lead member roles and allowances.
Thank you, Councillor Parry. I'm going to return to Councillor Wolf as the seconder of this substantive motion, and then we're going to vote on it, please. So, Councillor Wolf.
Can I raise a point of order, Chair? I've indicated twice to speak and been overlooked twice now.
Actually, Councillor
So have I.
So have I. The order with Councillor Lacey Clark. I am the next in the line.
I've been down a few times as well, Councillor Weller.
I'm terribly sorry. I'm trying to keep up with what's going on. Lots of chit chat as well. Sorry. Let's go back then to Councillor Weller.
Chairman, I am sorry, but as Councillor Lacey Clark, I actually put in the exact same time frame as Councillor Parry. I am next in the speaking order. I am sorry to be a bit of a stickler for this, but I would like to speak.
That's fine. It's fine, Councillor Lacey Clark. It's just I'm doing my best to catch up with who's writing what.
I'm more than happy to wait for Councillor Lacey Clark and anyone else, so long as I'm called at some point, Madam Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I start by apologising? I don't mean to be grumpy with you. This has just really kind of hit me in a way that has kind of annoyed me with the whole of how politics seems to work. Because initially we had a supposed amendment put forward by the leader of the Green Party, which kind of made sense. In some ways, I can see the argument of where they were coming from. And then next, we've got Councillor Clayton saying, but he would be fine with it if some of the jobs were given to his party and other parties. And actually, that just stinks of something political. And actually, come on, guys, we are all people. We are all doing this job. And actually, the next election, it could be a completely different setup, in which case another party may be in control and will have those special responsibilities to give out, as they do now. But the whole idea of us saying that we want to encourage young people to take part in our politics and actually have a place on the council is great. And then we say, but actually, we won't remunerate them for that. We'll just make them, do it for free because, everyone can afford to do that. Well, actually, as much as it might be stereotypical that all politicians are exceptionally wealthy, I think, as I said earlier, I really am not. And actually, I know myself, and I know at least one other councillor that has now been given, luckily enough, a lead member role, who will take a drop in pay in order to do the role. The amount that the SRA is going to be covering me is less than what I'm paying to have my other job covered. So actually, it's going to still be a negative end of the day for me. I actually end up with less money, which is literally what I use to feed my wife and myself. It's not something we can do, let alone try to start a family, which I would really like to do at some point. It's something that we need to have these kind of allowances available to enable young people to be involved, and not just young people, but everybody. There's so many older people that can't actually afford or think they can afford to be councillors within my own division or my own ward. This should be open to everyone. And if you are going to be doing 5-6 days a week full-time job, you should be remunerated for it properly. And as I've said repeatedly, SRAs do not have to be taken. You are absolutely allowed to refuse them. So if you don't require that money and you morally don't think you deserve it, don't take it. If you're, I don't know, for example, the leader of an opposition group on the council and you're not doing half the work the leader of the main group's doing, then don't take the money. You do not have to. But some of us actually need that to feed our families and live if we are to work what is a full-time job plus some. I'm sure I'm not the only councillor that does 60 to 80-hour weeks every week. Let's face it, this is not a job you do for the money. And as a total take-home of 23,000 before tax, actually that is just above average income for one person in Dorset, I believe. Anyway, I've ranted enough. Sorry, Chairman. I got really annoyed by how it seems to be politicising this, which it just me seems silly. Sorry. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. I'm going down all the list to see who I haven't asked to speak. I shall still probably miss one or two out, but we're going to Councillor Kimber.
Thank you very much, Chair, and it's a great honour and privilege to speak, and thank you in this debate. We've already heard tonight from Waypor and the Trades Council about low wages in Dorset. I consider, as a councillor, I know on my last council post, funnily enough, I found one of the pay slips, and we weren't paid anywhere near 13,000. In fact, I believe it was about half that on the old Weymouth and Portland. So by any means, I believe we are well paid. Now, I want to disperse the idea that some of the councils with portfolio holders are working harder than the rest. I can assure you, Chair, that all of us are working very, very hard. We've had, even here tonight, during this meeting, I've had 2 phone calls with people with concerns. So let's kid ourselves that one half of the council's working a lot harder than the other half. You know, there's the old average which we say in Labour Party conferences, I'm being political. If you want the poor to work harder, you pay them less. If you want the Tories to work hard, you pay them more.
Paul's gone mute.
Paul, you've switched yourself off again.
Still on mute, Councillor Kimber.
Right.
Okay.
Hopefully
back.
that should. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Excellent. I believe anybody that puts themselves up for an election will have to have that ethos of serving the local community, the civic duty. And I'm always very proud of a lot of you across party for the way you work. And I think you do a lot of work, but don't neglect the idea that half of us are having a very, very easy time. I wish that was the that was, but I will be voting against this tonight. And as I've said, I believe we're all very well paid. So that's it from me, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Councillor Kimber.
Well, nearly became Mr. then, did I?
Well, you did nearly. You know. Right. I'm trying to find people that haven't had the opportunity to speak. In amongst others, Councillor Coombs, was there something you wanted to say?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I was asking to speak when Jonathan Mayer stepped in about the amendments. I totally agree with what he said about that, but I will be supporting the original motion on the table.
Thank you very much, Councillor. We then go on to Councillor Weller, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. For the avoidance of any doubts, you won't be surprised to know that I absolutely believe in the labourer being worthy of their hire, and I believe that suitable allowances does encourage a mixed group of councillors, makes us much more diverse and much more inclusive. So I don't have a problem with allowances being paid. I also acknowledge absolutely that some of the portfolios that the cabinet members hold are huge and far too big for one single person to get a grip of. So the idea of having lead members to help them with their portfolios, I think is good and right. And as I say, those people are therefore worthy of being paid for those roles. So forgive me because I'm going to speak, and I don't mean this to be in any way personal, and I hope that nobody will take it that way, because I don't mean to cause offence in any way. I can only speak from my own experience, and that is with having worked very, very closely with Councillor Bryan over the last 18 months. His portfolio is huge, and among his responsibilities has been our 3 harbours, and I've worked very closely with him as the former chairman of the Harbours Committee. During that time, the chairman of the Harbours Committee receives as a special allowance considerably less than £10,000. A lead member for Harbours has now been appointed and will earn £10,000. Effectively, there will be 2 councillors, and I don't know the exact figures because I'm not very good at exact figures, but effectively we will be paying £15,000 out to 2 members to support the cabinet member. And this seems like duplication to me, so that concerns me. As I say, I don't mean it to be personal, but I like Councillor Loughnessy very much. Oh, sorry, I've got the name wrong.
Not Clark, but you're fine.
And I respect his abilities, and absolutely, with the amount of time that he's giving out as a young councillor, he deserves the remuneration. But I think he's going to be duplicating his work, and I question that. That's the only thing I question on this matter, and I just needed to be able to say it. It's a duplication of work, in my view, because the chairman of the Harbours Committee can do all the supporting of Councillor Bryan that he needs. He only has to ask. Thank you.
We appear to have lost the chairman. I think from the list we are down to Councillor Stella Jones.
No, I've already said my bit.
Okay, thank you. Then I think with Councillor David Taylor.
Just come in. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Councillor. No, you've muted now, Councillor.
Hang on, back on. Here we go. The allowances is a bit weird for me, because the fact is that I don't understand why we're creating new positions, giving allowances, but you're expected to do the job, and then you're expected not to do the job for cheap pay. Martin, I'm online. So I'm a bit unaware of what we're trying to vote for here, because we've got people who get accepted allowances, not that they're going to get allowances. What you're actually voting for, actually, to be quite honest. Does that make sense?
Yes. Thank you, Councillor. Chairman, are you back online?
Yeah. I'm sorry, but I.
Councillor, if you can hear me now, I think we're down to Councillor David Took, but we do have a question from Councillor David Taylor to confirm what we're actually discussing and what you'll be voting on. You may wish to ask Jonathan to clarify.
Thank you.
Jonathan Mayer, are you able to?
Yes, I am able to clarify, Chief Executive, that what members are considering at the moment are the substantive recommendations 2 and 3 together. So whether to support those recommendations or to vote against them.
Thank you very much indeed. We still appear to have lost the chairman. Is the deputy chairman able to step in?
Yeah, I can come in now, Matt. Okay, so we've lost Val by the looks of it. I think do we have anyone else that wants to speak, or shall we move this to a vote?
I've been waiting to speak for some time, Councillor Parks. It's Ray Bryan.
Okay, Ray, if you want to go ahead.
Yeah, I'm most intrigued by the discussion that's been going on.
Can't we keep to the order that we're in? I mean, you know, come on.
I was way before you, David, so I'll carry on. I'm amazed by the discussion that's going on, because a few months ago, when we were in the chamber at County Hall, I remember quite clearly a question being asked of the leader as to whether he would increase the size of his cabinet because of the workload. And it was aimed specifically at me because I'd just taken on the climate change. When I had the opportunity to take on 2 lead members, I very carefully chose people that will challenge me on the areas that we need challenging on. And I am very proud that on one hand, I have Councillor Cherry Brooks, who did a superb job on the EAP on highways, but I've added a couple of other jobs to her. And I've got on the other side, Knock Lacey, who in the best will of the world is not going to be easy for me to deal with, but I want those people to play their part in creating new ideas, helping me create new strategies and policies going forward. It's time for change, and we need the manpower to do it. We said we were going to be a member-led council. These new positions actually strengthen that. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Next on notes, I've got David Took.
Thank you. Couple of things. First of all, thank you to Jonathan for the clarity that we are actually voting on 2 and 3 separately rather than 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6 as a block.
You're on mute, Councillor Took.
Yeah, I wasn't, but I was again. Okay. First of all, as I said, thank you to Jonathan for confirming that we are looking at 2 and 3 as separate vote rather than the original idea of a block of 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. The issue of special allowance, or the issue of lead members, yes, we could have lead members, but we have very responsible, very hard-working and generally quite good portfolio holders. And I query whether they need the level of support that they're looking to get, especially in the time where we have lots of people who are facing redundancy and employment. It's going to cost the council £60,000 to employ these 6 people. Well, it's going to cost more because, of course, it's employers' NI and a few other add-on costs. So I would first of all wonder why the portfolio holders are not able to actually complete.
You've gone back onto mute, Councillor Took.
Yeah, no idea why. I wanted to know why the lead members are necessary to help the portfolio holders. And we've got lead members who are going to be 2 to 1 up on the portfolio holders. Are we saying that the portfolio holders should have had a 3-man job in the first place? This just seems strange. And in a situation where we've got people being made unemployed, people being made redundant, people losing money, I think this is a very insensitive move on the part of the council to actually increase the spend for councillors. I was glad that we didn't set the allowance at 13,500. If we had, I would have not taken that extra. But I really don't think this is a sensitive thing for the council to be doing at this particular moment in time. Thank you.
Okay, I think we've got the chairman back with us, or maybe not. I think her internet is down. I've got 3 more councillors waiting to speak, which is Councillors Quayle, Rennie and Heatley, and I think we'll hear from those and then we'll move to the vote. So Councillor Quayle. Councillor Quayle.
Thank you, Vice Chairman. Sorry about that. I had planned to say something earlier, but I'll just respond to some of the things that have come up since. I was delighted when the leader approached me and asked me if I was willing to take on one of these enhanced positions. And after we had a lengthy discussion, I went inside and said to my wife how fantastic it is. I can actually do more work in the Dorset Council, which is something I've been keen to do. And when we sat down and looked at it and looked at the hours that the leader had mentioned would have to be put into this, I looked at my wife and said to her, well, I don't know if I can do this, because the amount of hours required on paperwork compared to the amount of hours you really put in, and all the councillors will know we put in far more hours than we actually publicise, although I'm sure some councillors go around and put a lot more on their literature. We sat down and we had to discuss about this, and my wife, who's a teacher, and she's technically paid 32 hours a week but works 80 hours a week at times, said to me that she would take on extra hours outside of her teaching role so that we could provide, or that I can do this role to provide and support children in education in Dorset. And that's an amazing thing for my wife to do. So in actual fact, it's I mean, I understand the political motives of those who are trying to vote against this. It's clear because it's great for your literature in the future, but there's a lot of work to do, and I literally, as Councillor Lacey Clark mentioned, can't feed my family. If I don't, I can be a great local councillor who goes around fixing potholes, or I could be the sort of councillor that helps to change, spends endless hours. I mean, the leader of the council said something along the lines of 30 to 40 hours to me, and I said, well, I already work 60 hours, and he then said, well, you have to cut work, and this is what you've been offered. So I wasn't going to speak on something that I've been put forward to, but it's just annoyed me that for great publicity, and I know we have media here that will have great headlines in the Echo in the morning, but as Councillor Lacey Clark mentioned earlier, we need to support people, as we do. We absolutely need to support people, and in doing this with the SRA, I can actually continue to work the endless hours that I will be required to do.
Thank you, Councillor Quayle. We'll move on to Councillor Rennie.
Thank you very much. Lots of it has been said, and I think everybody's going, go to the vote, go to the vote. But I think something's getting a wee bit lost here. Byron talked about people talking about political motives. When Claire spoke at the beginning, she actually said all members have expertise. Also, I'd like to point out all parties have younger members who also would be good for succession planning. I think this all may have been more useful to us older members who aren't looking for these positions, probably have done them previously, and for no political power whatsoever. It's because we care passionately about being councillors. But all members have expertise, and the younger members of all of the parties have expertise. And I think it would be helpful that this was recognised, and maybe if the leader had spoken to other younger members as well, this whole hour we spent talking about this may never have ever even happened. I think it's about, Spencer has always talked about having a cross-party council and talked about the good of the work done by everybody for the people out there. Lots of people have been doing all this support anyway for members of the cabinet, and I think we're just losing sight of Claire's first proposal, which was about all members having the expertise and the need that they are seen and understood and valued. Kate talked about the labourer having a worth, and I think that this is all getting a bit lost in this politicalness that others are bringing up now.
Thank you, Councillor Rennie. And now on to Councillor Heatley.
Thank you, Chair. What must be at least an hour ago now, we fairly heavily voted against awarding £40,000 to be spread equally between all of us. Most of us, I am pretty sure, because we felt it was just not the right time to do it. What we're debating now is whether to spend £60,000 between 6 of us. And I think the same consideration applies. I think it would be profoundly inconsistent for us to do so. Had we introduce the new lead members at no overall cost to the special responsibility allowance budget, I might feel differently about it. But the real issue is the extra £60,000. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask Councillor Wharf to wrap this up, and then we're going to move to the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much. I shall try and be brief. First of all, I'd like to thank Claire Sutton, Councillor Claire Sutton, who has been completely transparent throughout this process. We have regular meetings with the leaders of the various opposition groups, and she made it very clear quite some time ago that this would be her position. And we found that very helpful because we were able to have a very sensible discussion about this, and we were able to make some changes, minor, in the way we were approaching it. So thank you for that. Somebody said that these jobs were to influence cabinet members. They're not. They're to do the work of the council. And I echo what Councillor Bryan said. His time in business and my time in business is you surround yourself with people who challenge you, not who agree with you. It is a real job. This job has been absolutely evaluated by the independent remuneration panel, and I emphasize the word independent, and they are very clear that this is an essential part of our role moving forward. And I would just point out that the original allowances were done extremely quickly, and there was a very clear statement that they would need to be reviewed in the light of circumstances after a relatively short period of time, and that is exactly what's happened. Somebody said, what happens if the political balance changes? Very easy. Every year we have, and you vote for the leader, and things flow down from that. So that is perfectly allowed for. There was talk about, do we work together with everybody? Well, Spencer and I have tried to work very hard across the political spectrum, and I would point out that we do now have 2 chairs of scrutiny groups, whereas previously we only had one from the opposition, the main opposition party. So we quite clearly, willingly gave that up in order to make sure that we had much greater coverage. Councillors, as has been said very frequently, we need to attract them, and they're more and more difficult to attract because of the opprobrium they receive from all sorts of people, and we need to ensure that we don't just get people who are either retired or independently wealthy, because otherwise we'll have a completely wrong cross-section. We need to have a cross-section of those older as well as younger, but we need to have the cross-section, and we need to make sure that we reward those people. We need to make sure that we do not pay people who make a lot of noise and then don't people who don't, because actually my experience is that people who are often can be quite poor are often quite quiet about it because they're quite proud as well. Nobody has an easy time, and no, we are not in for 1 minute saying that we don't appreciate the work that all councillors do, but these jobs are real jobs with real extra responsibilities, and they will take an awful lot of time. I would remind you that the total costs of council laws is much, much less now than it was under the previous arrangement, and we absolutely do need to be able to attract new and interesting people to stand for council and to take responsibility and to take the time. There was a comment that these people need to be drawn from all groups. Well, if we drew somebody from the Greens, that would be 1 person at most, and we don't do that because democracy is the first past the post system. I entirely accept other people might want to other systems, but that's the way we work, and we will accept that when it goes the other way, and other people need to accept that because that's the way we are. We will run as a Conservative administration, but we will take into account all of the people all across the spectrum, and I challenge anybody to say that I have not personally done that and put my heart into it. So it is a difficult decision. I think we need to move away from virtue signalling, and we need to recognise that to get the job done, and there is a huge job to do, we have to make these positions and we have to pay them appropriately. So I ask members to bear that in mind when they come to the vote. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wharf. I'm now going to move it to the vote. Susan, do you want to just talk us through that, please?
Yes, Chairman, can I just confirm that you wish to vote on recommendation 2 and recommendation 3 only at this point in time?
Yeah, I think that's correct.
In that case, I will just do that for you now. Chairman, the link is now in the chat panel.
Thank you.
We are just waiting for the last few votes to come in, Chairman. I think we're nearly there. Is there any councillor who has been unable to vote? Councillor Pothecary, you've rejoined us. Have you been able to vote? I think you're nodding. Is there anybody else who has not been able to vote? In that case, I will declare the outcome of the vote. The vote is carried. There were 43 votes in favour of recommendations 2 and 3, 29 against and 3 abstentions.
Thank you very much. Chair, have you got the technology to take over again?
I have. Can you hear me?
The answer is no.
I don't think we can hear you, Chairman. So I'll carry on for the time being, and if you get your connection back, then we'll go from there. Okay. So we now need to take items 4, 5, or recommendations 4, 5, and 6. Have we got someone that could propose those on block?
Proposed on block, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Flower. Do we have a seconder for that, please?
Seconded on block, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Wolf. Councillor Lacey-Clark, you've asked to speak.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to hurry the discussion along, because I'm assuming it's going to be very similar to the last ones. I was wondering if the I guess the opposition parties, everybody else that has been already said they don't agree with the new SRAs and the increase in allowances, are also going to suggest the same amendment to go against these SRAs for the scrutiny committees. Because is that the case? Can we just move straight to them making that recommendation?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lacey-Clark. Does anyone else wish to speak? I'm not getting any other rights to speak. Yes, the monitoring officer would like to speak.
Chairman, only to say that we've reached the 3-hour mark nearly. So if the meeting is going to continue, then under Standing Order 8, you will need to get members to resolve to continue the meeting for a specified time. And I really do suggest that, bearing in mind that you've got the fundamental review of outside bodies and the calendar of meetings only left, the members agree to proceed no longer than 10 o'clock.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Sorry, just advice, do we need to do that before we continue the debate?
I think, Chairman, that depends on how long, on how extensive the debate is going to be. I think it's safest to go to the vote on Standing Order 8.
Okay. Thank you for that. Could I have a proposer to suspend Standing Order number 8, please?
So moved, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Flower.
I'm happy to second that, unless Councillor Ireland wants to second it in the spirit of cross-party.
I'm happy to second that, Peter. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Councillor Ireland. Okay.
How about letting the voting fodder second now and again?
Okay, we'll bear that in mind for the future, Councillor Pipe. I'm just going to take this. If anybody objects, could they say so now? Otherwise, I'm going to take it that we accept this proposal.
So, Chairman, are you extending until no later than 10 o'clock?
That is correct, yes. So no later than 10 o'clock. If anybody objects, please speak now.
Accept, Chairman.
Thank you. And anyone that wants to abstain? Okay, we'll move on. Thank you. So we'll go back to items 4, 5 and 6, or the recommendation 4, 5 and 6. Does anybody else want to speak on that, or can we move it to the vote?
Let's move it to the vote, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Shortell. I'm not hearing from anyone else. Susan, can we move to the vote, please?
Certainly. The vote is now in the chat panel.
Thank you.
I think that's all the votes in, Chairman, unless anybody would like to say they've not been able to submit an electronic vote. Okay, I've received 74 responses, 60 voted in favour. Sorry, I'll update that. I've just received one more. So that is 61 votes in favour, 8 votes against and 6 abstentions. Those recommendations are carried.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you members for some good debate there. We'll move on to agenda item number 15, which is a fundamental review of outside bodies, and Councillor Fry is going to introduce this.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'll read this and hopefully be a bit quicker than the last items we've discussed. Following the merger of 6 previous councils into one, Dorset Council inherited a diverse portfolio of organisations and groups that had previously been represented by members of the various councils. These outside bodies play an important role in the smooth and effective running of Dorset, but we have grown over the years and the list has become extensive. With less councillors elected across Dorset, this list needed trimming. A small cross-party group of councillors were tasked to review the relationship between these groups and Dorset Council. All outside bodies were considered using the following criteria. Where the below criteria is not met, the recommendation was to withdraw from this commitment. The level of Dorset Council's involvement with any outside body needs to be deemed essential, critical, or mandatory. Second point, is the participation required to comply with the terms of reference or constitution? Or a councillor sitting on that group that is not deemed to be essential, critical, or mandatory by the Dorset Council is considered local member choice for which mileage cannot be claimed for attendance. Following extensive consultation, the group have drafted the proposal before you today. It is recommended that the list of organisations is subject to an annual review. Any suggestions to include, exclude organisations at the annual review should be sent to the chairperson of this committee or Democratic Services. I therefore propose that this report is adopted as it stands with the annual review as part of the adoption.
Thank you, Councillor Fry. I believe Councillor Williams is going to speak to second this over.
Yes, thank you. I would just like to say the panel did a thorough and comprehensive review of all the outside bodies, and I'd like to second this recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Wharf.
I think Councillor Knox was before me. Thank you, Chair.
Apologies, Councillor Knox, Lacey Clark.
On one very rare occasion, I have not put an RTS in. That's not
no, it's Councillor Knox. Councillor.
Oh, apologies.
I am Knox and assume you mean me. I do apologise, Councillor Knox.
my apologies. The order I've got them in the chat bar is Councillor Wharf, Councillor Knox, and then Councillor Kimber. So, Councillor Wharf.
No, sorry, you've got Councillor Rebecca Knox is before me.
Yeah.
Okay, apologies. Councillor Knox.
Yeah, thank you. I really I'm so appreciative of the work that this body has done, but I think it can go further. So there are certain bodies within my area. I thought I'd asked that they were extinguished, but they haven't. So I'm just going to ask the Les that can I ask again that we review some of the ones in my area which I don't think are relevant. I had thought I'd fed that through, but I can see that there are some which are not relevant anymore, and also are taking up some council funding which is not relevant to us as we stand. So I hope this is an ongoing review, and by voting for the agreement of this, I'm not actually sanctioning that they are ones which are going to be there forever.
Chair, if I can speak on that, I think this will be a live document that will be reviewed constantly. So I'm happy to take Councillor Knox's comments and include those in the document as it's reviewed.
Thank you for the clarification on that. Okay, now it is Councillor Wharf.
Thank you very much, Chairman. All I wanted to say was Councillor Les Fry has done an absolutely excellent job. It was a huge piece of work. He was never ever going to please everybody, but he has managed to produce something that is a significant step forward on the rather patchwork mosaic quilt that went beforehand, and I think this gives us a basis upon which to review regularly and take decisions to make us a more effective and efficient place. So thank you, Les, you did a great job. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wharf. Next to speak is Councillor Kimber.
Thank you, Chair. Let's hope I can speak without the microphone going off this time. Yeah, I also wish to echo the thanks to Les. I know I came onto the team a bit late, but I want to thank the way in which it was done. Also, the way he dealt with my appeal, because I knew the history of the minerals side on Portland. So just a big thank you to Les for the way you dealt with it sensitively.
Thank you, Councillor Kimber. Next, I've got Councillor Lugg.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to say that this was an excellent example of cross-party working, and we took the role very seriously. Councillor Fry said it's an ongoing process, so no doubt we'll be looking at some of these bodies again next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lugg. I don't have anyone else requested to speak, so I'm going to move this now to the vote. Please, Susan.
Certainly, Chairman. The voting form's now in the chat panel. I'm just waiting for the last few votes. If anybody hasn't voted, thank you. I think that's probably all the votes in, Chairman. I've received 73 responses. I've received 71 votes in favour, 1 against and 1 abstention. The recommendations are carried.
Thank you very much for that. Okay, before we move on to the next item, I see the chairman's back in the video screen. I'm going to see if she can take over again.
I don't know whether you can hear me still.
Yes, we can.
Oh, good. Sorry, well done. So we are on to item 16, amendments to the calendar of meetings. We're going to ask Councillor Flower to introduce it, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Well, this is an obvious change as a result of the new governance structure with the splitting of scrutiny from overview. So that's the main reason for this. There are one or two other adjustments as well, but it's unusual to change a calendar during the year, but there was a reason for it this time. So I don't think I should spend very long talking about it. And members have had a chance to look at it. I'd like to move the recommendation set out in the report. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder, please?
Councillor Bill Pipe would like to second that, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Pipe.
Thank you so much. You made my day.
Could we put the vote up, please, Susan?
Certainly.
Hang on, I got to write it.
Great.
Oh. Never mind.
I'm just waiting for a few more votes to come in, Chairman.
I did ask to speak on this.
Sorry, that's Stella, isn't it?
It is, yes, yeah.
Asked to speak on what?
It's only a comment. It's only a comment about the meetings. We've been talking about getting young people interested in the council. We won't get them interested unless we start having meetings in the evenings when they, at the moment, can do a job and then come along to the council meetings as well.
Thank you very much. Do we have a result, Susan?
I do, Chairman. I have received 75 responses, 72 votes in favour, 2 votes against and 1 abstention. The motion is carried.
Thank you very much, Susan. We have agenda item 17, urgent items. I'm pleased to say there are no urgent items. So we move on to the last agenda item 18, exempt business, and there is no exempt business. So thank you everybody for joining the meeting. It's been interesting. Thank you very much. Good night, everyone.